Okay, according to this, I'm live. According to this, I'm live. I'll repeat myself because sometimes when I start this, I don't know if it has something to do with my connection speed, but sometimes it actually jumbles words even worse than I do on my own. Okay, but anyway, according to this, I'm live, and so okay, if this is working, all right, I'll start the video. I'll flash this video into existence. Yeah, well, big bang the video into existence. Fully formed universe, billions of years of history right in front of you, and we're ready to talk about Star Trek and the Orville. So we'll just, boom! Flash of light and fully formed universe with history behind it already. And we've just watched Star Trek and the Orville just last night. And the week before. And the week before that as well. But I want to film last night and the week before that. And that's just what I'm going to ramble about as I bring in the video with my low-tech game of peekaboo that because I don't have an intro for live streaming. I just don't have the technology. I probably could get the technology, but, you know, yeah, whatever. Whatever. So far, playing with a piece of paper or a card in front of the camera has worked well enough for now. Or sometimes it's a sometimes it's a little video game device. Once I tried it with a Halloween themed chocolate bar, but I'm just rambling on about starting the video because it just kind of boomed into existence. There we go into existence, playing peekaboo with the camera. Because why not? Why not? All right, so I'm starting the video, trying to keep my energy levels up. On one hand, I just watched the Orville, and, you know, so I'm full of happiness and energy and all kinds of wonderful stuff like that. And on the other hand, I watched Star Trek Discovery, so a little bit of my soul is dead. I mean, contrary to popular belief, your soul will grow back. It's just mental energy. It's just imaginary. It'll grow back. It'll get, you know, but if this was a pre-recorded video, odds are somewhere in the intro there would have been a flying car. So this is my Autobot equivalent of the Cavalier. Kind of more like a Cobalt, but yeah, kind of like a Cavalier. Yeah. And the Cobalt was kind of like a Cavalier if the Cavalier wasn't designed under the General Motors J platform, which was actually a pretty comfortable, durable vehicle that looked great. As opposed to the Cobalt, which, unfortunately, was a little bit closer to the ground. And I hate it when cars get lower to the ground. I despise that. I think it looks stupid. And why would you want to be even more vulnerable to road debris? But, you know, I think of course, they have the Cobalt in mind when they made this. But if it was a Cavalier, it would have been even better. The Monza wasn't too bad. That was the ancestor of the Cavalier. But the Cobalt was basically, what if a Cavalier was made but using a bad platform, the General Motors Delta platform, which I don't think it was, you know what, I don't have enough experience with them to really judge, but this Cavalier has an oversized aft phase cannon, yeah. Whatever. That's my intro. And just trying to keep my energy levels up, because, yeah, well, I mean, it's afternoon, so it's around the time I'd wake up, and I got some energy drinks here. I mean, I just finished off a can of Monster Mean Bean, which I like, not just because it tastes good, but the name reminds me of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which was an awesome video game. But, you know, here's the thing. Do I go with blue or red? I like both flavors, blue or red. Blue is my favorite color, blue or red, but, you know, like, I get a red Cavalier, you know, red's a pretty iconic color, too. You know, I probably drink the blue stuff more than the red stuff, so maybe it's time for the red stuff. And you yourself could decide which flavor I'm going to drink, but why would you? You might earn that level of influence if you were subscribing to me on Subscribestar, but you're not. At least maybe not yet. I don't know. But because you're not even watching. Nobody's watching right now, which is fine, because the only reason why I'm doing this as a live stream is because if I were using my digital camera, I'd have to clear out space on it and organize it, and sometimes it just shuts off at random. So, yeah, so this is lazier, easier. And you know what? Because it's a live stream, I'll be deliberately sloppy and not care if I mispronounce things, misspeak, and, you know, mispronunciate me words, you know. Grammar bad, recommended, you know, whatever. No, I'm not gonna deliberately Yoda the thing up. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Nobody's watching anyway. Nobody's watching. Don't detect any. Oh. Chronally displaced. Oh, yeah. There's some activity. Oh, it might even be creepy people. Ooh, something bad's going on, but not in this time frame. So when somebody's watching this later, yeah. Lunatics and crazy people are out there. But, you know, there's good people out there, too. And hopefully one of them will watch this. Or not. It doesn't matter. I'll probably later edit this into another video if I get around to it. If I get around to it. But I'm actually trying to keep myself caffeinated enough so I'm not talking slow and drowsy. And talk about more recent episodes of Star Trek Discovery and the Orville. Which to talk about first? Well, everybody wants to talk about the Orville because it's bloody fucking awesome. The Orville just keeps getting better. You think it can't get better? And it does! So yeah, I want to talk about the Orville. So let's get Star Trek Discovery out of the way. Yeah. Hey, it was renewed for Season 3. I actually saw somebody doing a video criticizing people for predicting Star Trek Discovery was canceled. Well, by all reason, it should have been canceled. That's why people were predicting it would be canceled. Me, I was 50-50 on it. Personally, I already think it did enough damage. I don't care if it goes on for 8 or 9 seasons. It's I mean, what difference does it make? I mean, Season 1 broke with continuity to the level that I've said it before. I'll say it again. At this point, it doesn't matter if the warp drive runs on candy corn. Just doesn't matter. Does not matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's not that I'm saying that it's a bad idea to make a Star Trek show where the phasers are covered with cotton candy and there's and the ship is built out of titanium and gravy alloy. No, I'm not saying that would be a good idea to just make Star Trek that makes no sense. That just kind of defecates over its own history and continuity. No, I'm not saying that would be a good idea. I'm just saying Star Trek Discovery has done it to the extreme that it don't matter no more what Star Trek Discovery does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's like, how can it get worse? Well, could just do more bad. Yeah, but it already broke with the level of reasonable quality control. And I remember there was a time and a place when things could be liked or hated. And if you go on the internet, if something... How should I put this? I'll even do this before internet history. When Next Generation came out, a lot of people were like, well, I just want more of Kirk and Spock. How dare they expand this universe? Now, people might think I'm exaggerating. No, there was a lot of crap published about Next Generation for years. And Next Generation was awesome. Season 2 was the weak point for Next Generation. But even that was, you know, not as screwed up as Discovery. Season 1 of Next Generation, there's a lot of good episodes in Season 1. And well, I mean, Season 1 of Next Generation was, I'd call it better than Season 3 of the original series for sure. It felt like the original series with a little bit more interesting. That's how I just would describe Next Generation Season 1. It really felt like the original series to me, except, you could tell it was later. You could tell they retconned stuff, but from episode to episode, the original series seemed to retcon a lot, so I never viewed the original series as a very stable view of Star Trek itself, because when I started watching Star Trek, it was in the fall of 1991, and probably what I saw the most was reruns when I first started watching it. Reruns of the original series and Next Generation. And the first 3 seasons of the original series, you could tell it started awesome. Season 2 was good, and Season 3 was mostly kind of bad. But you could, but not bad, just bad compared to the previous seasons. You could see like a constant downward spiral for its quality. And with Next Generation, that first season was about on par with the average of Star Trek in general. If not, at times, on par with the best of the previous incarnation of Star Trek. Then you had Season 2, which, a little bit dreary. I mean, you had the episode that introduced the Borg, and that was pretty cool. Right from the start, it had like this creepy feeling. You could tell that Q was about to do something kind of serious. Not just kind of the music, but the overall tone of the way the episode came into being. I find when I watch that, you get a creepy feeling right from the start. And that's just great. But Season 2 was weak. But Season 3 was awesome. Of the first 6 seasons of anything produced Star Trek, I would say Season 3 of Next Generation was the best. Like, I liked the original series, but I liked Next Generation more. Probably the weakest, I don't know. It's hard for me to pick which I thought was weaker. Season 3 of the original series or Season 2 of Next Generation. I'd probably say the weakest was probably Season 2 of Next Generation. And, I mean... Season 3, that of the original series, that had Spock's brain. The episode titled Spock's Brain. Which, I'll give it credit for one thing. I mean, despite how absurd it was for somebody to come and abduct somebody's brain, despite that, I will give the episode credit because I kind of felt like when they were talking about things going on in the background, like an alien species capable of ion-powered propulsion and stuff like that, I felt like they were really trying to build a science fiction world in the background, even though they decided it was okay to do an episode about Spock's brain being abducted. Now, a lot of people crap on the episode Star Trek Voyager Threshold for being the worst of Star Trek. And the reason why it's hated on is because the absurdity of how they go to Warp 10, how characters get mutated into salamander creatures and all that. Which, yeah, that's bad too, but I don't know. I never felt it was worse than abducting Spock's brain. I'm just saying. But both of those episodes, despite how bad they are, I would hold them up as still kind of better than Star Trek Discovery. And some people think, well, you're just shitting on Star Trek Discovery if you can say that those two examples of a bad episode of Star Trek is better than Discovery. But no, I just referenced things that were good about Spock's brain in that episode, despite how bad it was, And then Threshold. In Threshold, despite how absurd the concept was, and how, even by Star Trek standards, the Star Trek went a lot of weird places, but you were really going into some crazy B-movie bullshit there, like 1950s B-movie bullshit, Despite that, if you watch Threshold and you ignore those aspects of it, you actually have a lot of personality. I actually really like the part where Tom Paris is in sickbay, getting sick, and he's like talking about holographic comics, and they're talking about what's going wrong with him, and the character actually feels like they actually acted out and wrote a scene where you could actually get a good impression of the character feeling terror and fear, and yet having a sort of sarcastic sense of humor for what was happening to him. Like the line about where they talk about what's happening to him, and he makes the comment about the tombstone saying, something about beloved Tom Paris, and they say something else indicating he's become radioactive. And he's like, oh, beloved Tom Paris, radioactive mutant, or something like that. Like it's got to be on his tombstone. And it was one, it kind of came off as genuine. And as much as I don't feel much urge to give Voyager praise, because it was, prior to Star Trek Discovery, my least favorite of the Star Treks. And that episode was a bad episode. It still managed to function as Star Trek. Then you have, like, Discovery. And if I think of the things in Spock's brain that made it still watchable, even if a bad idea. If I watch the Threshold episode of Voyager and think about what made it a bad idea, and then think of what substance is still in that episode, I still come away with something that, feels more appropriate as part of the Star Trek universe. That feels like it has a better entertainment value than Star Trek Discovery. Which is not to say I haven't found some enjoyment in Star Trek Discovery. If you've ever sat back and watched a bad TV show and you're just kind of like, yeah, I don't care about quality. I'm just turning on the TV to watch something that just happens to be on. And looking for little things that might entertain you. To me, Star Trek Discovery comes off as actually kind of like Battlestar Galactica. I didn't like either version of Battlestar Galactica. The original was way too campy for me to find interesting. And then the remake, everybody was crappy. I mean, I didn't care if the Cylons wiped out everybody. I was like, I hate those people. I hate every last one of them. There's a couple characters that every now and then have redeeming qualities, but I absolutely despise these characters. The more I see them, I just want the Cylons to eradicate them. That's straight up all I want. I want... And my only thing that I was curious about with Battlestar Galactica, the remade one, was how they were going to do a more realistic take on, well, Earth is a lost colony. And you kind of want it to kind of match the real world. Science fiction to me is always best as if there you have everything that we know in the real world, then you take it beyond that. Like Star Trek is like a possible future. We don't really know how we'll figure out to go faster than the speed of light. If we do, we have some ideas, but we don't know how it's going to work. But here's an idea on, you take what we know today, this is the world that we know of, then you expand upon this into some sort of fantasy world, but then you ground it in some sort of science to make it kind of like have its own type of reality, and you go with it. You remove things from real life to some degree. There's like some connection to the world but it goes beyond that. That's what I like in science fiction. With Battlestar Galactica, it's like, okay, they're looking for a lost colony, which is supposed to be Earth. Okay. But the humans originated from a different planet? Well, how do you reconcile that with Earth? We know we evolved on Earth. I mean, that's not something that should be up for debate in any reasonable way. I mean, so it's like, maybe in the 1970s they thought it was kind of a cool idea if humans came from another world, and ignore the fact that, humans are basically a breed of ape. And there's apes all over the planet, and our ancestors go back to the point where they're not even human anymore, and you could figure that out without any problem, and that there's life on this planet that, if it was terraformed, then, it obviously took place a long time ago, it's like billions of years of history, there's just certain things that are just not reasonably up for debate. And then it's like, all right, we're looking for the lost colony that happens to be planet Earth. It's like, so how would you reconcile that in the new Battlestar Galactica? That was my biggest curiosity, and it turned out that the Earth that they were looking for just wasn't what we call Earth, and what they ended up calling Earth was this planet, but it wasn't that planet. And then humans just evolved twice, evolved with that other planet, and here just exact same thing, evolved twice, which I thought was lame. I mean, that was the thing I was curious about, and I kind of watched for it. And I mean, if there wasn't anything on opposite Battlestar Galactica, I'd often put on the Space Channel, and I ended up watching it, and usually just despising it. But that's Battlestar Galactica. It's something that I couldn't get much enjoyment out of. Well, I can get more enjoyment out of Star Trek Discovery than Battlestar Galactica. In Stargate, they established that humans were the second evolution of the ancients. But in Stargate, they had that whole thing where the ancients, regenerated life in the galaxy after it was wiped out in a plague. And you could kind of picture, a planet being guided towards evolving humans again when you have that level of technology. Like in Stargate, it didn't feel as unnatural due to the nature of the ancients and the first evolution of humans in that world. And I always thought it'd be kind of interesting if they did a plot line where they uncovered the origins of the ancients, and it turned out that the ancients were actually time travelers. That the universe as seen in Stargate was some sort of predestination paradox or timeline that was an altered timeline, that the ancients themselves were from actually humans of the future, and blah, 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 blah. I just thought that would be kind of an interesting idea. But of course, I never did that. But I'm okay with humans evolving twice in the Stargate universe, just because there's so many things within the Stargate universe that made it seem kind of plausible by what was being presented to me. But even then, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I still would take that over what Battlestar Galactica did. But that wasn't what I hated about Battlestar Galactica. I just hated the characters. And I mean, I despised the characters. Kind of like when I watched Alias. I remember I hated that show. J.J. Abrams was behind it. Wasn't it? Wasn't that the one he was behind? I remember that was a very bad sign. Oh, Lost. He was behind Lost. I despised Lost. And I remember saying that to somebody about how I hated that show. I don't understand how it's popular. And somebody said, well, you got to watch a bunch of episodes to catch all the things that are going on. And it's like, well, I caught more than one episode. And I just hate the characters. I can't stand the characters. So that, to me, that was a bad sign when I discovered J.J. Abrams was getting Star Trek. But he managed to. He's good at marketing. And that Star Trek 2009 made enough money that they also gave him Star Wars. And I wasn't as sad to see Star Wars get ruined as it was Star Trek, but I didn't like seeing either one ruined. To me, the strength in Star Wars was the expanded universe, now known as the Legends universe, and that kind of came to an end. It's not as good as it used to be, and the new movies kind of suck, and but I wasn't into that Star Wars movies anyway. But I'm just leaning because I'm lazy, I'm tired, but anyway, getting off topic. I was trying to do a vlog about my opinions on just about every episode this season that airs related to Star Trek Discovery and the Orville. And last week I didn't do one for that episode, and I didn't get around to uploading many of the videos I recorded. But I have them recorded, and maybe someday I'll want to upload them and just be my collective thoughts on the past season of Star Trek Discovery and the Orville. And both have been airing on the same day, so there's that. But focusing on the difference in them and my general opinion of Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery this season has felt more competently written, but they haven't really fixed that much. But I will give them credit. Of the two more recent episodes, the one that was on yesterday, I started to envision them fixing a lot of the mistakes they made. Now, fixing the mistakes that they did with continuity is one thing. It's hard, but some of the things that had happened were written so badly, so stupidly, that even if you could fit them into the continuity of Star Trek, I think they stick out like some sort of festering, infected, glob, tumorous Star Trek Discovery STD on the corpse of Star Trek. Because even if you could fit the overall event, the things that break with continuity, even if you could fit that into the timeline, somehow fix it, we're still dealing with some bad storytelling. So I don't think that it fixes everything by just fixing the timeline. But that said, it does help to kind of fix its position in the timeline. Now, there was one theory going around and about how Star Trek Discovery could be the future of Star Trek Enterprise, that Star Trek First Contact started a new timeline that includes Enterprise and then Star Trek Discovery. First off, no, that doesn't work. Here's why that doesn't work. First of all, Star Trek Discovery does not make a very good follow-up to Star Trek Enterprise. For one thing, the Klingons are all wrong. It just doesn't really fit as a follow-up to Enterprise. You might want to separate it from as much Star Trek as you can, but no, it doesn't work as a follow-up to Enterprise. Ignoring that, even if you were to say that Star Trek, the original series, Star Trek The Next Generation, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine took place in a timeline where First Contact, the events of the movie First Contact, had not yet split off a different timeline, Star Trek Voyager definitely takes place in a timeline where First Contact and Enterprise have taken place and had their effect on the timeline. For example, 7 of 9 has quoted the events of First Contact. And of course, that information, maybe it got back to the Borg Collective when they first activated the deflector dish that they were using to try and send a signal to the Borg Collective. Maybe that's how 7 of 9 knew about the events of First Contact and the Borg's role in humans meeting the Vulcans and all that wonderful stuff, and the Phoenix and all that. Maybe that's how 7 of 9 knew, but that would mean that Voyager was still taking place in the timeline created by First Contact, but it didn't seem like they got off a proper signal. It seemed like it just started up, and it maybe it got off the signal, maybe it didn't. It seemed like there was potential, but I don't think that was it. Star Trek Enterprise, where mysterious cyborgs, and by the way, every time you see a cyborg, that doesn't mean you know what the Borg are. The Binars are an example of cyborgs in Star Trek, and there's got to be other cybernetically enhanced species. And it was also established in Voyager that, wreckage from Borg wreckage usually reveals very little usable information or details about the Borg themselves. That was in a line of dialogue in Voyager anyway. So, when people make a big deal about them discovering Borg wreckage in Enterprise, it's like, no, that fits. That fits. In fact, when I saw First Contact and they just blew up that thing in Earth orbit, I thought to myself, well, there's got to be debris floating around the Sol star system for quite some time. I mean, it was an emergency situation. They didn't have time to clean up all the Borg debris. They had to get the timeline back on schedule. So yeah, I mean, straight up, it should be no surprise that there was mysterious cyborg problems in the past that actually were the result of the Borg. In fact, there was a Star Trek Voyager novel, which is not canonical, but it means I wasn't the only one thinking this when I saw First Contact, because it was referenced in the Star Trek Voyager novel, which told me that one of the writers of the novel had referenced fallout from the Borg being blown up over Earth's atmosphere. You know, and I forget exactly how they worded it, but that, you know, eventually it was determined that that was the result of the Borg sphere being blown up. But anyway, okay, so Voyager definitely is a timeline created by First Contact. The Enterprise episode most likely is when the Borg got the transmission back to the homeworld, or to the Borg collective, because they established that the mysterious cyborgs they were fighting that came to life and, you know, took off and started assimilating technology and took off, you know, and I assume that they probably took just about anything of value with them. I don't know all the details, but that when the Borgified that Earth ship and turned it into a formidable vessel, they were trying to get a signal back to the Delta Quadrant. And they established that with the subspace technology that had been enhanced on that ship, that the subspace signal will probably reach that area of space in about 200 years. And while some people are thinking, well, they should have been shitting their pants for 200 years waiting for that to come back. It's like, no, that's not a realistic expectation. It just isn't. Just because, you know, they're trying to portray a story. They're trying to portray a universe. Something bad like that happens. Yeah, there's a lot of bad shit going on in what you see in Star Trek. They're dealing with a lot of problems, and this is supposed to be, you know, 200 years prior to when the Borg actually come. So it's like, no, they're not going to spend 200 years shitting their pants over this problem. It's going to be one minor detail amongst a series of problems, not just the ones that you see in Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek The Next Generation, but a whole fleet of Federation starships are out there discovering new problems all the time. In this world that they're supposedly portraying, to assume that, you know, this was some great revelation. No, this was a warning sign to the audience of what's to come. But we already know. We know as the audience. But it was just another little piece of the puzzle. The overall way that the Borg are weaving into the Star Trek universe. And I that's actually one of the Borg episodes I really liked. The Regeneration episode from Enterprise. Best of Both Worlds, of course, from the Next Generation. And in between, the first one that they did for, timeline-wise, the one that would come before Best of Both Worlds, and after Regeneration, Q Who. Was it Q Who? Yeah, Q Who. Whatever. Anyway, then introduced the Borg. Those 3 episodes, to me, were the best of the Borg. They were the few times that the Borg truly felt creepy and interesting, and yeah, whatever. But anyway, that episode of Enterprise showed why 7 of 9 should really know all about First Contact. It also showed why the Borg were dicking around in Federation and Romulan space before they decided to invade Earth. It seemed as though they decided to invade Earth because Q blipped the Enterprise D into Borg space. The Borg were like, well, shit, this is a surprise. This is something of interest. These things aren't supposed to be here, you know. And that got the Borg's attention, and they went after Earth. It was already established that the Borg had been wiping out Federation colonies. They just didn't have solid information on what was going on with it. It was, you know, its own Best of Both Worlds. That was the result of Q Who, the Borg, coming for the Federation. But the Borg already were dicking around in Federation space, and Romulan space for that matter. And it's kind of strongly indicated in the episode of Enterprise. The reason why the Borg were dicking around in that area is because a Borg ship was destroyed there 200 years prior, and yeah, they were coming to investigate. That's why they were dicking around in local space. So you have a series of events. There should be a timeline where the complete and utter, first dealing with the Federation and the Borg would be Q-Who. Q's little warning to them that, here comes here's a threat out there that you're not ready to deal with, which would lead to the best of both worlds, which would lead to First Contact, which would then change the timeline into what we were presented in, to the timeline that we already saw in Star Trek Enterprise, Star Trek The Next Generation, and Star Trek Voyager. So, it all weaves together. Basically, First Contact created a new timeline. But this timeline that we see in First Contact, created by First Contact, is our timeline of The Next Generation and Voyager and also Enterprise. So anyway, that's just me rambling on about this idea that you can fix Star Trek Discovery by treating it as a different timeline because First Contact split the timeline. Yeah, First Contact split the timeline, but it's a timeline that gave us Next Generation, Voyager, and Enterprise as we see them. So it's not, you would also have to reconcile Discovery with Next Generation and Voyager. And that would save you from reconciling it with the original series, which is one of the hardest ones to reconcile it with because it takes place so close to the original series, but it doesn't work. There's got to be more to them. So, anyway, that's just a long ramble. Very long ramble looking at the time that this thing's been going on for. About that. But no, a week ago, Star Trek Discovery gave us a fairly good episode. Wasn't great, but it was better than average for a Star Trek Discovery. And my nose is itchy. There we go. Involving the Kelpians and Saru going home and dealing with the Barul. And there's one point where we see the Barul, and I think, wait, is this the same? Is this another thing like Armis from Next Generation? Remember Armis? Is that how you say his name? Armis? Argus? Armis? No, Argus was the Argus Array. Armis. That big monstrous thing that killed Tasha Yar, which I thought was a pretty good death scene. Yeah, it was random and out of nowhere. That's life, motherfuckers. Random and out of nowhere, bad shit happens. I actually thought that was a well done death and how the characters handled it. Where, as it happened, there was no chance to really deal with it. But then you get the impression it really affected the people who spent a year with her, becoming her friend and caring about her. Yeah, I thought that was a well done death. Tasha Yar's death in Next Generation. Armis. Pretty sure his name was pronounced Armis. I could be completely wrong about that. I'm horrible with names. But, yeah, that's what I was thinking of when I saw the Barul crawling up out of the slime, dripping with the black goo. I was like, but I don't think they're Armis. I don't. And my nose is so itchy. Probably inhaled cat hair again. So many cats. Cats over there in the room. Anyway. Yeah. And I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was great. In fact, my thoughts on it, it's hard for me to really bring up in my mind truly what I thought of the episode. Because right after I watched it that very same night, I watched an episode of the Orville, which was... It amazed me. But I'm going to talk about Discovery first before I get to the Orville. So I'll just say that it seemed okay. And so far, Star Trek Discovery, I'm liking the character of Pike. I didn't love him or hate him. I thought the first episode, The Cage, and I consider The Cage to be canonical, even if it didn't originally air on television as a regular episode. Once it hit VHS, as far as I'm concerned, that's even more legitimate than airing on television. And it was labeled as episode 1 and everything, on VHS. Episode also VHS was a variation of it. They labeled as episode 99, even though there was less than 80 episodes of Star Trek, the numbering system. But then the alternate version of episode 1, they just called it episode 99 for some reason. Whatever, they could have called it episode 0. I mean, that would have made more sense. But whatever. Yeah, and I thought it was an interesting episode. I thought it was likable, but to me, Pike came off as sexist. We're talking early '90s sensibilities, and I know that they were, it was made in the 1960s, but I remember thinking that. It didn't ruin it for me, not like some sort of social justice warrior moment where you gotta think, oh, everything's sexist and racist. No, just some of the lines made by Pike made me think, God damn, how do you function, I mean, it's supposed to be the future, and that far into the future. Yeah, I get if it was the 1960s, some people would say shit like that, but just his reaction to working with women was... I thought it was absurd and outdated when I watched it in the 1990s, something that didn't age well, and that stood out to me. It stood out to me. I wouldn't have taken Pike to be a religious person, like they kind of tried to portray him halfway as in Discovery. I almost said Voyager, in Star Trek Discovery. The Telosians, at one point they put him in the illusion of that he was in hell. And they commented on it being from a fable he read about when he was a child or something like that. Well, if that's how the Telosians react to his thought, his opinion of hell, and that is also, what it was to him, a fable that he read about as a child, I wouldn't say he's very religious. And I'm just fine with that, because the future of Star Trek was not supposed to be religious. That was always a part of it. People could be religious if they wanted to. There was always going to be the freedom to believe whatever you want, even conspiracy theories, you see people trying to censor conspiracy theories now, shit like that going on in the real world. Well, none of that in the future of Star Trek. You can believe what you want. You have that right, But it didn't seem like... Obviously, the Telosians wouldn't believe in hell, and it didn't seem like Pike did either. I guess with Star Trek Discovery, they referenced that at one point they were planning to make him very Catholic. And it's like, what? In the first season... there was reports saying where they were allowed to ad-lib some lines, but they weren't allowed to say, oh my God, because nobody believed in God. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, it was extremely uncommon for people to be religious in the era of Star Trek, the original series. That there were some references to it still existing to some degree. And they still kept some of the traditions. Like there was a chapel on board the Enterprise for doing ceremonies like weddings and stuff like that. Now, granted, Kirk was not a priest or anything like that, but, they still set up, like a chapel for weddings and ceremonies like that, excuse me. They still had holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and blah, 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 whatever, So, a lot of traditions still existed. But for the most part, it was... And by the movies, the period of the movies, which is really pretty much the same time period as the original series, just, a few decades later, they referred to their old religious beliefs as mythology and so forth. yeah, I'm okay with that. But the thing is, they might not have religious belief might not have been common, but but they kept the curse words. They kept the traditions. They didn't. There was no indication that they got rid of Easter holiday related stuff or Christmas. And they definitely. I mean, if you listen to McCoy, he had a full set of Christian curse words that he would use as much as the censors would allow for it. So yeah, I thought that was going overboard with Star Trek Discovery. When they said, "Oh well, you can't even say oh my God." Well, couldn't McCoy say God damn it? I know we said damn it a lot, and where do you think damn it comes from? I mean, damn it, to damn something, you send it to hell. But so you could go overboard with it, and they kind of made Pike as not actually believing in religion, but having a respect for the idea, which I think kind of works. I like they made Pike, not wording words well, probably need more caffeine. They made Pike a likable character. And the other time when I saw a really likable character, when they recast number one, they recast Majel Barrett's character from the pilot episode, from the cage. And I like that character. The interaction between them. I want to see these two characters on a show. I was liking that. That was some good Star Trek moments. I mean, I was liking that. And, the Discovery, the ship, hate the ship. I don't like it. The Discovery's crew, yeah, they've never really been put to good use. Saru's kind of cool, but whatever. But I've been actually liking, Pike and number one. It's like thumbs up to that, So anyway, I don't even know what I was gonna say. Basically, I was trying to say that the episode where they went back to Saru's people, I thought was well done. Of the short treks, I saw a lot of negative reactions to the Kelpian episode when they were doing their short treks. I was kind of okay with it. It did kind of... I had issues with it because it kind of went against my expectations of the Kelpians. To a certain degree. But at the same time, I was kind of like, you know what? I could kind of picture that culture. He did reference them being bred to be a prey species to a degree. And I could picture them having a pretty much religious belief that would basically lead them to let the predators eat them. And it would make sense that if that was somebody's culture and beliefs, that the Federation wouldn't interfere with that. Though, it was a mixed... It was... I'm not saying I didn't have issues with it, but I actually did, to some degree or other, appreciate the Kelpian short trek. It's kind of like the Mud short trek. I actually was a little bit amused at the end of it when you discover, there's Mud, doing shit with androids, I thought that was good. I just thought it just didn't fit the timeline very well. But then again, I have no idea when it takes place in the timeline, so I don't know, maybe it could be just prior to Kirk finding it. It could be late. I don't know. I don't know if they established it. It's been a while since I saw the episode. I don't know. I don't know how to make sense of Star Trek Discovery, but it's Star Trek Discovery. It's problematic. Yeah, but I was okay with that. Then came this next episode, the one that was on last night. And to me, last night was all about the Orville. So I watched the Discovery episode. Did I absorb the Star Trek Discovery episode? Yeah, I absorbed it. I watched it. It's going to take me a minute to actually think about what I thought of it, but you know what? This episode with Spock, now I hate to give Star Trek Discovery the benefit of the doubt, And some people will say, well, you just want to shit on Star Trek Discovery. You'll get that attitude. No, I've watched Star Trek Discovery. I hate to give Star Trek Discovery the benefit of the doubt because I know what happens when you give Star Trek Discovery the benefit of the doubt. And it ain't good. It never lives up to the benefit of the doubt. For example, everybody thought that the Klingon War that they did in Discovery was incredibly inappropriate. And there was a theory that in the last couple episodes of Star Trek Discovery, time travel would be invoked using the spore drive. And they'd miss the point in time that they're trying to get back to. When they try to get back from the mirror universe. They'd mess everything up. They'd get back like 6 months too early. And they'd undo the Klingon War. And that the series would continue forward, but the Klingon War would be undone, the timeline would make more sense, and all that. And that would better fit with the politics and overall workings of the galaxy before Star Trek, the original series. That was a theory. And I thought, yeah, I think that's going to happen. What happened? Well, the last few episodes of Star Trek Discovery, they invoked time travel. But they didn't go 6 months into the past. They went 6 months into the future. The Klingons had wiped out, a third of Starfleet and taken 20% of Federation territory. And the Federation was in shambles. And while that might not sound like, well, they didn't lose the whole thing. Well, no, that means they're in bad shape, and they were going down hard, and shit, that's not good. That's not good. Yeah, badness going on there. Yeah, and that just kind of further. It was like they doubled down on what people said didn't fit the timeline. They doubled down on it. Giving them the benefit of the doubt that that's what they had in mind, it was kind of like, well, they had that in mind. But instead of doing it, they took things they didn't do to mitigate some of the problems they created. They took it in the opposite direction. It wasn't like somebody put a band-aid on a wound. It was more like somebody just rubbed a mixture of dirt and poison into the wound. And not a type of poison that works as antiseptic. Just straight up poison. Poison and dirt and bacteria and just... They didn't bandage the wound, they made it worse. So, just to use that as an example of giving Star Trek Discovery the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't pay off. They're kind of like the fans will say, well, it looks like they could be doing this, and it'll make things better. It'll make things make more sense. And then what do? It's like they listen to the fans, then they do the exact opposite. So, I will take a moment to give Star Trek Discovery the benefit of the doubt on last night's episode. What it looks like. What comes to mind and what might be happening. And I say this idea that is me giving them the benefit of the doubt. I say this under full acknowledgement and expectation that they won't live up to the benefit of the doubt. But I have this feeling where things might be actually going in a good direction. Because they brought Spock. Spock is in a catatonic state. Alright, I don't think that really ruins Spock. Some people said making him a murderer kind of ruins the character, but if he wasn't under control of himself, that would, again, he didn't have mental control. I mean, that's doesn't, it's, you can't hold that against the character permanently, I think the doctors that Spock murdered were Section 31 agents. Now, they've really been dicking around with Section 31 in a way that seems highly inappropriate. But, I thought to myself, wait, Section 31 really wants Spock for some reason. I think the doctors that he killed and broke away from when he went into hiding and ran off, I think they might have been Section 31 or something similar. I don't think they were actually professionals trying to help him. And maybe, just maybe, the reason why the crew of the Discovery and Pike are speaking so freely about Section 31 is maybe Pike has had experience with them, so he knows about them. And Discovery was always thought to possibly be a ship that was involved with Section 31, so maybe most of the Federation Starfleet doesn't know much about Section 31. Maybe they're just a few people with knowledge of it. I don't know. But I was thinking that this whole thing, Section 31, might actually want Spock. That might be part of the whole reason why Spock is running from them. And I just thought, like, I could picture this all being, like, it all kind of working out, like, a lot of the little details. But hey, now we know that the Red Angel, it's actually Isaac coming over from the Orville universe. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. When you see the Red Angel, it's like somebody in a cybernetic suit. Looks like it might be a Kaelon with wings. You know, that's just a joke. I won't waste time on that thought. But yeah, that's what the Red Angel is. That's a Kaelon. It's actually a Kaelon. That would actually be cool. So no, that's not what the case is. But yeah, the whole tampering. The whole Section 31 thing, you know, that's what I'm thinking anyway. And, yeah, that the whole thing is a lot of what we're seeing is a time manipulation. I think they're going to try and tie it to the timeline of the original series, but they're going to make a lot of things go away, and they'll probably do an incompetent job of it. And while this episode didn't really win me over in any way that made me think it was great storytelling, there were certain things that happened where I started to picture, you know, like, things that actually could work out. And that's kind of optimistic to say that Star Trek Discovery looks like it's doing something that could work out in a positive way and have an overall story arc that makes sense within the main Star Trek universe, or even the Star Trek multiverse. You know, that's a thought. You know, that's actually a thought that I came away with when I saw everything they're talking about Section 31. I mean, Ambassador Sarek knows of Section 31. It's established now, but, you know, who knows? There could be reasons for that. But yeah, it's kind of stupid to make Section 31 well known. And the black badges, black badges were stupid. They just straight up were. You know what? The black badges could make sense if you wore like the black Starfleet emblem. Was maybe if that was a sign that you're involved with a top secret project and you're to be left alone. You know, if it's amongst a crew of trusted people, you know, that could kind of make sense. You know, you have the badge, and it's kind of like you have authority here, but you're not going to be free to talk about what you're doing. You know, I could picture that on a ship where there's already a high level of security. Making sense. But just wearing it and going around like it's an FBI badge, you know, that's stupid. That's stupid. But that, yeah, whatever. It actually makes me think, and I don't know, did I say this in any of my other live streams? I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I said this somewhere before. But it makes me think of the Batmobile. The Batmobile's kind of a bad idea. It's a great idea for the Batman to have the vehicle, but you'd only take it out in rare occasions, you know. To what I think the logical thing the Batmobile should be, whatever cars are common at the time, with a dark paint job, some sort of hidden armor on the inside of the body panels, and bulletproof glass, windows that are tinted in a way that doesn't immediately look tinted, looks like there's a reflection, but you know, that you can't really see in all that well, like modified to a degree, but and kind of obvious to a degree, but not so obvious it looks like a fucking space shuttle driving down the road. And like the perfect example of what's absurd about the Batmobile was I was watching the animated version of The Killing Joke, which has added scenes added to it beyond what was in the comic. And there's like the part at the start of it where the Batmobile's coming towards the place where the criminals are doing their organized criminal activity bullshit, whatever. You know, they see the Batmobile coming. They know it's the fucking Batman. If it had been just a normal-looking car that was armor-plated in a discreet way, they're not going to start firing rockets at the fucking thing because you don't want to fire rockets at a random person just passing by. You'd be getting attention of the police and all sorts of bad activity. You know? But if it was a car that didn't look like the Batmobile coming up, they wouldn't have started firing missiles at the damn thing. You know, it's like the Batmobile got blown up because it looks like the Batmobile. Everybody knows here comes Batman. I mean, the whole point of Batman is he's supposed to be stealthy. He's supposed to be like a ninja. And then he shows up in the vehicle that says, hey, here's Batman. You see that vehicle? Batman's either in there or he's coming back for this vehicle. Batman's in the neighborhood because there's the Batmobile. You know, Section 31, for the most part, they're supposed to be secret. You're not supposed to see a hint of their existence. Giving them special badges is like... It's like saying, hey, look, this is the secret organization that's not supposed to exist, and here's their official badge. Like, no, that doesn't make sense. It's a bad idea. It's stupid. It's stupid. So the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, they went into a time anomaly, and the Michael character, she found her brother Spock, her adopted brother Spock, and had further encounters with Section 31. Emperor Giorgio, however you pronounce her name, the Emperor did helpful things, although most likely to meet her own personal goals at the same time, but it also revealed that Section 31 is a little extra evil, a little extra sleazy, a little extra screwed up. And we already knew that they were kind of screwed up and evil, but there was always like this kind of idea that they were doing something for the greater good. And then it's kind of like, yeah, they're more than just doing things for the greater good. It's like full-blown evil. You know, because in Deep Space Nine, yeah, they were the bad guys in Deep Space Nine, but there was kind of like this gray area thing where they're doing what they're doing because they think the ends justify the means, which kind of violated how Gene Roddenberry wanted the future to work, but it still made for an interesting story in Deep Space Nine, you know. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about Section 31, but Section 31, which was supposed to be one of the most secrets of Star Trek, the Star Trek universe, they kind of contradicted that pretty badly. But I couldn't help but watch this more recent episode and start to imagine ways that it could fix a lot of the continuity problems. And I say that with the thoughts that it looks like they might be doing that, but it looked like that before, and they usually just make things worse. So that's all I can say about that. But on to the Orville. And as always, lots of spoilers. Recently, well, I'll go all the way back to Season 1. Season 1, with the very first episode, gave us a fairly good and interesting introduction to characters that were both skilled and competent, but went through life events that led them to a certain level of incompetency, down on their luck, the captain down on his, like, definitely getting command of a ship. Um, you know, very skilled individual, but not in the best place in his life. And, you know, he gets command of the ORVILLE. And that was, they actually did a good story. It was a good story in that aspect of it. Introduced the characters in a way that was good. And that first episode, though, I had kind of issues with the time device. I mean, excuse me. There's so many issues with the passage of time, aging, making plants grow. Excuse me. That it came off as a magical plot device that was one of my least favorite things they did in season 1 was that thing that used quantum fields to make objects age and alter the passage of time. I thought that was problematic. I had issues with it. But despite those issues, there were things in that episode I thought were great, especially the introduction of the ship and the characters. It wasn't a new ship, but you know, needed a new captain, needed a new crew, and it was all around. That was a good episode, and the episodes that followed it were thoughtful, they were entertaining, they were intelligent, and it was a great show, which I really like. It was a great show. Season 2 picked up, giving us some great character moments. I mean, the first episode, they did a pretty good episode based around taking Bortus to use the bathroom. Yeah, that was the plot, and it was actually an all right episode. I mean, just think about that. The episode, Bortus had to go home to urinate. You know, his species urinate once a year. Big celebration. I wonder if when he went, if Clyden also went too, because they're supposed to go to their homeworld for that. Maybe Clyden doesn't recognize that tradition. Maybe he went once on the ship somewhere. You know, I don't know. But because it was Bortus that had to go. But I mean, Clyden's a Moclan too. He's on the ship, and then there's their Moclan child. You know, there's 3 Moclans. You'd think that would be 3 trips to the Moclan homeworld. Oh well, don't think about it. It was still a good episode. Maybe that happened in between episodes. We've seen Bortus go, so we don't need the time that they take. I mean, be it Orville or Star Trek Discovery, TV shows now, or at least those 2 TV shows, have been giving us half-assed excuses for seasons. The Orville is great, awesome storytelling, but in the olden days, used to get 20 episodes a season would have been a low number, you know? You exceeded 20 episodes a season. Now it's like, oh, wow, we got more than 13. We're doing great this year. Oh, fuck. Oh, well. But, you know, we had a lot of character episodes. We had the episode where they went to Saleya, you know, that world named after Mount Saleya on Vulcan. But they're not Vulcans because instead of being a highly temperature, dry, hot environment, you have a beautiful world that has really heavy gravity. I mean, they're both beautiful worlds, but I'm just saying one planet is known for Mount Saleya, and the other planet is Saleya. But, you know, there's no copyright issues because they spell Saleya with an X. So that should be Zaleya. But they still pronounce it Saleyan. The species is still pronounced Saleyan. Which I don't actually have a problem with. I actually like thinking of them as an alternate universe Vulcan. Yeah, the planet formed differently. What I really want to see, I want to see the episode where they reference how close Saleya is to Earth. Because if it's 16 light years from Earth, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear, because that means it really is an alternate universe, planet Vulcan. I don't know if the Moclans are supposed to be Tellarites or Klingons. I don't know. I don't care. The Moclans. Bortus is awesome. The Moclans have a shitty repressed culture, but Bortus is awesome. You know, the Moclans are there too. The world building of the Orville, I love it. I love it. My least favorite thing this season was, if I'm remembering his name correctly, because I'm horrible with names, was when Lamar referenced dating a two-headed alien, and each hid didn't know about each other. Because I thought, if it was a joke, it wasn't that funny. If he was just bullshitting his friend, it wasn't really that great of a character moment. And if it was legitimate, it just kind of hurt the world building, in my opinion. It was like a failed Futurama joke. Futurama had a lot of jokes that made the world feel silly, that worked, and they expanded upon the world. But then every now and then they do something, especially in the later seasons, that more or less hurt their world building. And that was like a tiny joke. It was just a tiny moment. But that just kind of like stood out to me as the one thing I took issue with. Was I just didn't like that one line, you know. But other than that, like this season, I've been loving it. And then going to the planet Saleya, that was great. Then you had the episode, which to me it was like the Next Generation episode, The Outcast, done right, only with Moclans. See, Star Trek for a while, they were trying not to piss off the censors because they knew some things would just upset the censors. And at the same time, they were trying to deal with social issues. So Star Trek The Next Generation did an episode titled The Outcast. And I think I'm remembering the title correctly. And it was a clunky episode. Not done incredibly well. It involved Riker getting emotionally attached and presumably sexually involved with a member of an androgynous species. And when you see the two characters getting to know each other, there's some moments that almost feel like genuine moments of sentient beings making connections, you know? It kind of feels a bit like that briefly. But they seem to spend more time talking about the differences biologically. And when they talk about the difference between males and females amongst humans, the episode was done in the early 1990s. I don't remember exactly which season it was, but I'm pretty sure it was after the 80s. I don't know if it was 1990 or 1991 or 92. I'm not sure I can't remember exactly when it was produced, but you know, that era of time. And as a teenager watching the episode in the early 1990s, I remember thinking, God damn, the gender stereotypes when they describe males and females in Star Trek The Next Generation felt outdated. It felt outdated. If I was watching a TV show back in the 1980s, I was born in the 70s, and they started describing the difference between genders, the way they were doing it in that episode, I'd think, man, these are some outdated motherfuckers, you know. It felt unnatural. It felt outdated, you know. And it felt clunky. And the Outcast, it was their way of doing a look at how people and how it's kind of a primitive mindset to how people have like a bigotry against those who don't fit the sexual stereotypes, you know, those, you know, it was an allegory. It wasn't really an allegory for transgenderism, more so for homosexuality and possibly bisexuality, where you had the species that had a single gender, who had ancestors that had previously had been two separate genders, but they kind of viewed taking on aspects of gender as horribly taboo and offensive to them, and they even had their own version of the gay conversion bullshit that some of the churches in the southern United States are known for. They even had that for those who didn't meet their stereotypical what they want to be the sexual norm. So anybody who dared to do something that wasn't the accepted sexual norm, would be punished and brainwashed into not wanting to do that anymore. And was it allegory for a lot of issues of, but it was a clunky allegory. You never felt like the characters were. You never felt like the character. You never really were presented with the characters getting attached to each other. And when they talked about gender stereotypes and things like that, it felt so very outdated and flat. And I've seen a criticism that came up over the years. They said, well, if the woman who was playing the androgynous person was actually played by a man, then the relationship between that androgynous being and Commander Riker would have had more meaning. And I'm like, no. The episode was so flat, and that wouldn't have made a difference. Because from a story perspective, they managed to establish that Riker isn't uptight about whether or not the person he gets involved with has an innie or an outie for their genitals. He was attached to the individual, and that was the basis for his relationship with this individual. Not their genitals didn't matter to him. So on that aspect, they succeeded no matter who was under the makeup to look like an androgynous being. I don't really see how that would have made a difference. I know that it would have been if they kissed, and that means they would have had two guys on camera kissing. Okay, but I'm pretty sure that probably happened a few times before in film and television history, most of the time not for that purpose, probably as a gag more often than anything, but, still what would be presented to you would still be the plot of Riker and an androgynous being. It wouldn't have changed things. It still would have been a very clunky, awkward story. What they did with the episode of the Orville, they took that concept, because the Moclans are a single gender. They happen to refer to their gender as male, whatever. It turns out that they're so misogynist that they won't let anybody be born female, but apparently they can reproduce with just a single gender. Moclan biology, just got to be questions, but whatever. Whatever. The Orville episode took that very clunky, awkward concept. They showed scenes that actually made it feel like that character was emotionally attached or really interested in the female Selayan on the ship. They had legitimate moments, human connection moments. Of course, neither of them are human. So sentient being moments of connection. And then they dealt with, the repressive stereotypes of the world he came from, being a threat to him and his family. And it was incredibly thoughtful. And it made the character Bortus all the more likable, because Bortus already kind of knew what was going on, but he wasn't a repressed asshole that was going to ruin this guy's life because he didn't meet his culture's standards. It was a very interesting moment for the new character, and I can't remember the character's name that replaced the other Selayan character, because I'm horrible with names, and but it was great character moments for that new character. And it ended on a very sad note, but it still came off as poignant. I remember with the Next Generation episode, The Outcast, that it reminds me of, and that episode also ended on a sad note, when the person, the androgynous being, gets brainwashed into thinking they never should have wanted anything to do with Riker in the first place. Riker fails to save them from that. And in fact, in the episode The Outcast, the only point where I kind of felt like it was interesting drama was there's one point where Worf says something where he doesn't believe that it would work between Riker and an androgynous being. Him just not believing that Riker would be interested in a person in that way. And then people are like, well, why? And then Worf, I think he realized he came off as saying something that sounded homophobic. Or androgynophobic. I don't know what you would call it in that circumstance. And he was kind of like, he just kind of shut up because I don't think he meant to come off that way, but I think he was just saying, I don't think that's within Riker's range of interests, And then later, when he realizes Riker's going to try and break the rules to save this person from their own culture, he's right there to back up Riker. So I thought that was a really good moment for Worf, where, it was kind of like, it came off like he's kind of like an old conservative, stereotypical, they can't do that, that ain't right. Kind of had a moment where it almost came off like that. And then you realize, he's going to back up his friend, trying to save the person that his friend cares about, no matter what. I thought that was a good Worf moment, when he said that whatever Riker does, no matter how much trouble Riker's going to get in to save this person, Worf wanted to have Riker's back. That was actually a good Worf moment, a good character moment. In this episode of the Orville that it would compare to it, they dealt with the same kind of issues, but every character moment was a good moment. Klyden was kind of the villain in that episode, and at the same time, in Klyden's mind, he wasn't doing the wrong thing. Bortus commented on how ingrained in the Moclans their culture is, and it literally is what allowed their species to survive on the harsh planet they evolved on. Many of their traditions. But at the end, you can also see Bortus staring off into space, thinking that he's upset with how things turned out. There was every character in that episode of the Orville that had a moment, an important moment that involved them in the plot, was having a very well-written and thought-out character moment. And this was an episode. I thought when they did the episode prior to that, with Isaac, when you see how Isaac forms emotional attachments, but he doesn't realize, what these emotional attachments are, and you start to realize, what level that Isaac is sentient, and how they took on the same concepts that dealt with Data forming relationships, and they kind of like did it even better with Isaac in the previous episode. I was thinking, how can you get better than that? How could you also, outdo that episode? And then before that, you had the episode where they went to Saleya and had, just great character moments with Robert Picardo, who played the Doctor in Star Trek Voyager, and does a very interesting Saleyan. And then you had the guy that played Phlox in Star Trek Enterprise, the greatest television show ever. You had Phlox from that show, or the actor who played him coming as playing another Saleyan, and it was legitimately when the interaction between the characters went bad, it was legitimately creepy. That's just a bloody fucking awesome episode. It's like, how could you outdo that? Then you get the episode, with the Moclan relationships, and it's like, they have to have hit the pinnacle of what the Orville can do. And then you stop and think about it. Right from the first episode of the Orville, you had the moment where they introduce Isaac. And when they talk about how, his species is known for being racist, that his species considers herself superior. And he's kind of like a liaison, like kind of like him being assigned his position in the Union is kind of like something to supposedly smooth over relations between the Union and the Kalons. And the first thing I thought is, well, this guy could be an enemy. It reminded me a little bit of when they had the exchange between Starfleet episode and Klingon officers in that episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where Riker goes over to the Klingon ship, and there was another episode where there was a Klingon on board the Enterprise, trying to make relations better between the Federation and the Klingons, officer exchange and so forth, that sort of thing. It reminded me of that. But just the way they described it, the first thing I thought is, you know what? This guy could turn out to be a spy. This guy could turn out to be the enemy, That's what I thought in the first episode, that it was like, you kind of like question whether or not you should trust him. Then he spends the rest of season 1 and much of season 2 learning, despite being an emotionless android, he has a thought process in him that makes him interesting and sympathetic. He is a sentient being. And you spend those episodes getting to know him, get to like him, getting to learn a little bit more about the character and the Kaylons in general. And you're thinking, it kind of undoes all that, anything that I thought at that first moment that this could actually be a scary enemy, kind of goes away. Because he literally comes off as being like from a species of datas. Except there are moments where they indicated, a problematic program would often just be deleted, and stuff like that, where you think, well, they're pretty cold-blooded to their own kind, how could, can you really trust them? A few moments like that, but for the most part, when you discover how he forms attachments, how he reacts to people, you kind of get the point. You kind of get the idea that no, this is a legitimate character, a legitimate crew, not a legitimate character. Of course, it's a legitimate character, a legitimate crew member who's really there for a good purpose and possibly will, smooth over things between, prove to the Kaylon that they want to have more contact with the organic beings of the Union. I have a feeling one of the cats is going to meow to go out the door. I don't want to put you out there. You'll be out there in the cold. I don't want to go out there in the porch. Anyway, I'm letting a cat distract me who's not even on camera. Anyway, that's beside the point. Anyway, they spend so much time with that character. Then they go to the Kaylon homeworld when he shuts down, and they're willing to just dismantle him and absorb his memories into their collective, which you kind of like. It kind of makes it look like they don't even care about their own, which is kind of like Isaac seems to have gone beyond that, that's kind of a bit of a moment, like not the episode last night, but the night before. And it was an amazingly good story, and amazing reveals too, that you spend all that time getting to know that character and like that character. And the offhanded thing that you think, that, maybe they are a threat. You spend all those seasons with that kind of going away when you think you've learned more and more about them and what they are. And then it's kind of like, shit, this is what I thought when I watched that first episode, for a moment in that first episode when they first introduced the character. But you spend all those episodes since then, undoing that one little thought. That was just a thought for a moment. It was impressive. It impressed the hell out of me. Now, when I first watched that episode of the Orville, it's on the same night as Star Trek Discovery. And the Space Channel airs Star Trek Discovery the hour before Fox airs the Orville. And Star Trek Discovery often goes over the hour-long time period by about 15 minutes. Could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be 15 minutes. Star Trek Discovery doesn't really care about its runtime. And I'm kind of fine with that, but that means missing the start of the Orville or just not bothering to see the end of Discovery. Now, when you compare the Orville to Discovery, it's like the Orville wins. The Orville is the better choice for watching. But if you miss a little bit of the Orville, it's perfectly fine to rewatch it. It's just like 2 hours later, it's on again, in a different time zone. So I've been letting myself, mostly out of curiosity to see how bad it's going to be, watch Discovery in its completeness right to the end, then watching what's of the Orville, and then rewatching the Orville to see the whole thing and get caught up on that little part that I missed at the beginning. And, I end up watching the Orville twice, but the Orville's worth watching twice, So after, when that, not last night's, but the week before, when that episode aired, Discovery had just got it over, tuned into the Orville, and I'm like, cool, they've gone to Kaelon, the Kaelon homeworld. I was like, this looks good. And then there was somebody, I saw them post stuff on the internet, like Instagram and stuff. And I've been watching them post stuff to different internet sites for a while. I was like, oh, look, they did a live. It came up on the notifications on Instagram, came up, they were doing a live stream. So I was like, well, I've never seen them talk, but I've seen them post stuff for I don't know how long. I'll tune into that. And I'm like, okay, this person's kind of cool. They're talking about how their account has been, somebody has used their picture to create a fake account of theirself. And I've seen that happen to this person before, where stuff she would post, somebody would take their pictures, pretend to be her, and then try to trick people into, I don't know exactly what they were doing, but there was one time they sent me a message. Somebody had saw that I commented on one of her pictures or something she had said, and they had a fake account of hers, used her picture, there was somebody else, and said, if you want to follow me on my private account, this is where you go. Like, somebody once sent me that message, and I said, I've got this message from the fake version of you've been telling us about. And they basically went on live stream about how somebody was doing it again. They were on Instagram live streaming, that somebody was, impersonating them again. And as soon as they had posted that video, I saw the person that was impersonating them. It came right up on Instagram, and I found them right after that. But that was what was going on. It's like, but I was like, oh, this person's live streaming there. And I was like looking at the Orville. I was like, well, I'm going to catch the Orville later again anyway. And I was like watching the Orville. I was like, holy shit, this is interesting. And I was like, there's like all these distractions going on. And I'm like, the Orville is amazing the hell out of me, and I'm distracted. So needless to say, I was impressed with the Orville even when I wasn't watching it very closely. And then when 2 hours later, actually at this point it would have been less than 2 hours later. No, it would have been 2 hours later, yeah. When it aired again in the other time zone and I watched it, yeah, it impressed the hell out of me. It's like by this week, by the time the Orville was airing this week, I didn't give a rat's ass about what Star Trek Discovery did. I was just waiting for the Orville. Because part 1 of Identity, the two-parter that the Orville did, it was the Orville's equivalent of the best of both worlds. It was a two-parter that ended absolutely awesome. It was an amazing episode. I believe part 1 was written by Brandon Braga, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the other guy's name, but I'm pretty sure. I saw both names on Star Trek Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise, to this date, the best thing on television, though the Orville may soon outdo Star Trek Enterprise as the best damn thing on television. There's my Star Trek Enterprise phase pistol. And the cat just meowed. And meow. You want to go out in the porch, right? It's cold out there, and you're a feeble, tired little cat. I don't want to put you out there. No, I don't. Come here. Oh, yeah, you find it awkward when I carry you. Look at the kitty cat. Look at the kitty cat. I'm not putting you out in the porch. It's cold out there. Look at the cat paw. Look at the cat paw. Oh, I can hear her purring. Oh, kitty cat. Oh, okay. Come here. I'll put you down over here. Oh, look at this. This is a good spot for you. Come right here. There you go. No, you don't want. All right. Yeah, the Orville impressed the hell out of me. Written by Brandon Braga and is it Andreas something or other? I'm pretty sure part 1 was written by them. Part 2, the one that was on last night, written by Seth MacFarlane himself. I must have collaborated on the whole thing, though. I'm pretty sure I saw him down as the writer for Part 2. Excuse me. Holy crap. This was the Orville's best of both worlds. And wow, it wasn't a season ender. I don't know. Sinuses. It wasn't a season ender. Yeah, I'm going to be stiff in here for a moment. It wasn't a season ender, but it was the Orville's best of both worlds. And there was so much dealing with how Isaac was just leaving the crew, just up and leaving. And you know that that's not something Isaac would want to do. Excuse me. But of course, he's going to be programmed to follow what the other Kalons ask of him. And what he had to do. And based on everything we learned about Isaac, you know that he wouldn't want to. But he is. That's what he's just doing. And you can tell something weird is up with the Kalons. And then it's revealed that they were trying to decide whether or not to preserve organic life in the galaxy or whether they need to eradicate it as a threat. And their own world has reached the point where it's basically all used up to them. They need another world. So they decide, I think it would be smarter of them to build up a backup, other worlds, places that don't have organic life, but maybe they're in a hurry and they want something that already has infrastructure. I don't know, but they decide to go for Earth. They're basically going to take Earth, and they don't feel as though they can trust coexisting with the humans, so they're going to eradicate them. And the big mystery is, why didn't they just kill everybody on the Orville? Then you discover they're going to use them to get past the Earth defenses. In Part 2. And, when you deal with a big reveal like that, you have to question how good is Part 2 going to be. Because sometimes you have like high expectations for Part 2, and like Part 2 lived up. The Orville has ways of defying expectations and still living up to them. And this just kind of, once you start to realize this is the Orville's version of best of both worlds, but nobody's going to be assimilated, but there's going to be a similar threat, and perhaps even a more urgent, stressful dilemma with the whole crew at risk of being killed at any time, and basically Earth going to be screwed over. When you look at it like that, it's like, yeah, they blew the expectations out of the water. I mean, I don't know how to talk about it without just blanket praising the fuck right out of it, because they just keep getting better. They should have fucked up by now, by TV standards. It's like, I still think. I mean, and season of Star Trek Enterprise has so many more episodes than the season of the Orville. And the Orville's only in season 2. Season 1 of Enterprise. I realized I'm liking this show as much as the best of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. And I was thinking, this is just season 1. This has got to be my favorite Star Trek. Season 2 was kind of like, the first half of season 2 was like, no, I don't like it more than Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, but about on par with those two. My past favorites of Star Trek. And then when you get to the second half of season 2, I found the second half of season 2, things got better, back to where I felt in season 1. And I'm like, yeah, this is my favorite Star Trek ever. Just use Enterprise as a metaphor. Season 3 and 4 even got better. I love what season 4 did for the mythos of Star Trek. How the episodes with the planet Vulcan, the episode with the augments, the Klingons, just fucking awesome. I mean, I don't know how I could love the Enterprise more, and then it went and got canceled. but and it came out at a time. The last season of Deep Space Nine. I mean, I love Deep Space Nine, but that last season was depressing. Loved the new Dax as a character. They kind of forced her into a lot of stuff just to introduce the character, just to end the season, so that was a little awkward, but I loved the character. And I wasn't a big fan of Dax prior to that, but I just loved Ezri Dax, you know. I was neutral towards Dax in the past. It felt like she was just there. She was highly skilled, fairly competent, had history with the captain, but other than the description of her, which sounds kind of interesting to me, that it felt like she was just there. Yeah, she got in a relationship with Worf, and it was like, okay, but to me, just stating it was as interesting as watching it. You know, I loved a lot about Deep Space Nine, but I I didn't dislike the character of Jadzia Dax, but it wasn't a character that made a big difference to me, you know. I really liked Ezri Dax. Like, she didn't want to become a Dax. It was like something thrust upon her, and she had like little ways of commenting on it and reacting to it that was both amusing and kind of endearing and interesting. Like, I loved Ezri Dax, but you know, but the actual individual episodes of season 7 were like depressing stories. It felt like the show was already over. Kind of like the 4th season of Babylon, or I mean the 5th season of Babylon 5. Except I found the 5th season of Babylon 5 better than the 7th season of Deep Space Nine. In fact, as I said, I was apathetic with Voyager in general, and the last season of Deep Space Nine really disappointed me. And I was more interested in watching reruns of Babylon 5 at that time, which had become my favorite television show. And Andromeda, the first 2 seasons of Andromeda, was before the show turned into unmitigated crap. The first 2 seasons of Andromeda were actually great. And then Farscape, you know, there's a lot of great stuff that came on that had the aesthetics of a science fiction show that I would enjoy. That were actually great storytelling with science fiction. And, you know, to me, Star Trek was something I loved, but I felt like it was over. Then along comes Enterprise, and I start to love Star Trek more than ever. You know, Enterprise to me, right from the start, I was realized, oh, I really like this show. This is great. And after Voyager, I was like, I thought that the people behind Star Trek had run out of steam, but Enterprise impressed the living hell out of me and became my favorite television show. And while there are other shows I really liked, you know, like House MD became my second favorite TV show ever, with Babylon 5 in 3rd place. And probably, you know, 4th and 5th would be Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. You know, like the Orville. When Orville was in season 1, I'm like, I like this kind of like how I liked Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. This is a great show. It's more like Next Generation and Enterprise and Deep Space Nine, but I'm loving this Orville. The Orville's great, you know. But did I like it more than Deep Space Nine or House MD or Enterprise? Not necessarily, no. Now it's like, yeah, this is my second favorite show. Maybe favorite show because it's holding its own against the best of Star Trek. And yeah, the Orville has impressed the hell out of me. Same creative team that was... it's a merging of the creative team behind Family Guy and the creative team behind Star Trek Enterprise, minus Rick Berman because he just wasn't involved with this, but because it's Seth MacFarlane instead of Rick Berman. But a lot of the people involved with Family Guy, a lot of the guys involved with Star Trek Enterprise, I mean, they came together. They're hitting this motherfucker right out of the park, to use a sports ball metaphor. They just damn, it's just oh fuck, you know, it's too fucking good to describe. Don't even know what to say about it. But yeah, the last 2 episodes, part 1, holy crap, that was awesome. What they did with their own mythos. Now, as great as the last 2 episodes are, I wouldn't recommend somebody start with them because I think they're so much better if you watch season 1 and season 2. Especially the first half of season 2. Well, you really need that episode where Isaac... I love that. That was another episode by Brandon Braga and the other guy who did stuff on Enterprise as well. And I loved that episode in season 1 where it involved the shuttle crashing. Um, it was the episode where Bortus has the line, "Now entering the glory hole," which was one of the most hilarious lines I've seen in anything in a long time. They come up to this space anomaly, which is kind of like a wormhole, but not quite a wormhole, and Gordon makes the line. He goes, "Back at Union Point, we used to call these glory holes," and then the captain's like, he's like, "No, nobody called them that. Only you called them glory holes, you know." And then they decide to go in closer and go through it so that they can find the shuttle that had got sucked into it, you know. And Bortus has the line where he's like, "Now entering the glory hole," and, and the captain's like, "No, Bortus, we're not calling it that." Never mind. That was just so fucking hilarious. And it also had some great character moments with Isaac. It's also, they also some interesting lines where they talk about Dysonium. Like Star Trek, you know, the stuff in Star Trek's powered by antimatter, you know. And they have the dilithium crystals. Dilithium crystals. That die sound at the start of it. For the Orville, it's Dysonium. But there's no indication of them using matter and antimatter reactions for their faster-than-light travel and communications. But they've referenced being powered by Dysonium. And stream of plasma that then goes through field coils that somehow create fields that warp subspace, like layers of space underneath or outside of normal space-time to create a bubble of normal space, and then a warped bubble around it, and able to make the ship go faster than the speed of light. Rather than doing that, it's basically the same thing, only they break apart a fictional element that contains exotic matter, a type of exotic matter that is capable of bending space and time, man. Which is interesting. It's interesting. I mean, dilithium is technically a fictional substance. Chemically, dilithium is possible. I think it makes a gas, but I think in some of the Star Trek technical manuals, they mention other elements that are present in dilithium structures that make it possible for it to exist. And the whole idea of it is that the actual dilithium crystal material has a very low interaction with antimatter particles, I think especially antiprotons, which actually isn't that unrealistic. In fact, I remember reading something about carbon nanofiber. That would be possible with carbon nanofiber to make some nanofiber. Nanofiber, I mean carbon nanofiber. I remember reading something theoretically, like the electron shell around the carbon atoms could be theoretically designed in something that would resist antiprotons for almost like an antimatter storage. I mean, still probably need some sort of magnetic bottle, but something that could actually help with the theoretical storing of antimatter, which that concept was never used in Star Trek. But I remember reading something about that idea as something that a scientist had proposed or something. Yeah, but anyway, I'm getting off topic. Yeah, there was a great episode where they talk about Dysonium, or they reference it powering their communication systems as well as their faster than light travel, and it was a great episode with Isaac getting to know the Doctor and her children, and you actually see a lot of personality in this soulless automaton, which obviously isn't a mindless, soulless automaton. It obviously is a sentient being. And that was in season 1. In season 2, you see so much more of indications of what Isaac is as an individual that you really kind of need that for the last two-parter, Identity, Part 1 and Part 2, to have its full impact. So I'm glad they held off on that story until season 2. because the more growth and attachment you have to Isaac, the better. The more of an impact it'll have when he's, his programming makes him turn on the crew, so to speak. And it also makes all the more sense when he tries to defend the crew. Is there anything I could think of to say about the episode and analysis of it? Well, I would have liked to have seen some Moclan ships. I mean, they're part of the Union, and I get the impression that the Union is supposed to be like Starfleet and Star Trek. They use Earth as their home base. In Star Trek, it kind of makes sense because when Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites came together, it was Earth that really made it possible for the Andorians and the Vulcans to get along. So, of course, they set up their home world, their capital. They put that on Earth. Now, that made sense. And Starfleet, Earth's organization Starfleet, became their collective space exploration and defense force. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of made sense, but, of course, there'd be Starfleet operations on Vulcan and Andor and Tellar and many other worlds that joined the Federation, and this one, when you see, like, all the Union ships, I was thinking the Moclans have their own design that seemed kind of like a Union design, but a little bit different. A little bit different than the Krill design, too, but, just a little bit. I think it would have been good if they had gotten some Moclan ships in there. They established that the Moclans wouldn't be close enough, but the Moclans are part of the Union, and you'd think that they would have ships all over the place, so you'd think there would have been a couple Moclan ships that would have been there, But, even if it wasn't like a big Moclan fleet, because so many of the Moclans would have been elsewhere. But I thought it was pretty cool when they brought in the Krill. And it did make sense, because the Krill, they don't particularly hate humans. They consider humans to be, according to their religion, an animal life form that's beneath them. So they have the right to exterminate and remove humans from wherever they want, because that's what their religious belief indicates. It's kind of like some humans will do whatever they want to any other animal life form, regardless of how cruel it is. It's basically the same thing. They believe they're superior, and in their case, it's their religion that gives them this sense of superiority. And when they went out into space and learned that the religion is probably false, instead of changing their beliefs, they actually doubled down on their religion. And they became more religious, it was established. So they don't hate humans. They just view them as godless, sub-sentient beings that are just lack the divine value that makes their lives special. And, of course, when humans and Moclans and Soleans fight back, when the Krill decide to exterminate them when they're in the way, then the Krill get angry because, oh no, there's an uprising of cattle against the farmer. How dare they, It's a very interesting concept, but they don't actually hate them. They just kind of just feel superior to them. It's an interesting dynamic, at least in my opinion. So, of course, they don't trust the humans when the humans show up, being chased by Kalons, when a few humans managed to get a shuttle off of the ship, to me that was an interesting dynamic. Then, of course, they don't believe the humans. They think it's some sort of human trap. And then a Kalon ship that was chasing the shuttle shows up and starts blowing shit up, and boom, bitch, the Krill have been brought into the fight. And that was a pretty cool moment, and pretty cool character moments. In fact, when they talked about if the Kalons join the Union, how advanced and dangerous and powerful the Kalons are, how that would have been helpful to their civilization, because a key component of their civilization and the forming of the Union is apparently mutual self-defense against the Krill, who might just up and exterminate somebody because they're in the way. You know, and it turns out that they get help from the Krill because the Kalons are such a bigger I mean, it's. I thought it was a great dynamic. I thought it was a great twist. And it kind of followed through the kind of like the spirit of Star Trek, that the Orville often. Oh, notification. Oh, cool. Egotastic Fun Time is talking about the Orville episode that I'm just rambling on about. Cool. That's probably a far better video than mine, and not as long of a ramble, which, holy crap. Is it 117 minutes and 4 seconds? Oi. Yeah, basically, just bloody fucking awesome episode. And as for character moments, I mean, they kind of managed to make it make sense why the Kalon didn't exterminate all the humans. They were basically, each and every human that was still alive was basically a hostage to get the bridge crew to do what they wanted, to trick the Union to letting them pass their defenses. And it kind of made sense, because the Kalon, I mean, they might win the fight, but they don't want to have to put up the fight. They don't want to lose Kalon infrastructure and Kalon beings. Even though they don't seem to have a strong concern about just switching off one of their own and when they're no longer needed. So, but they still don't want to have their ships and infrastructure destroyed. So yeah, it kind of made sense that they wanted to get all the way to Earth and use the Orville as a trick to get past the defenses. It did kind of make sense. And because the Orville found out what they were, they kind of rushed their plans into being and all that. It actually did kind of work out. Kind of worked out as a workable story. And it actually, the fact that Isaac was established, that, his way he values life is different, that he would quite possibly be willing to sacrifice himself, does seem within the nature of the character. And and if he had any urge to preserve himself, the fact that the other Kalons would potentially delete him if needed and or reprogram him, it did seem, reasonable he would be apathetic and disapproving of his own kind, and within his own self-interest to side with the humans. And he eventually does. I actually did feel as though it felt natural that he tried to do what he could to keep humans alive as long as he could, but didn't push things too far, because ultimately he would have been helpless to make a difference anyway. And at the last moment, he did make his move when things went past the point that was acceptable. I don't know. I actually felt that worked. The use of Norm Macdonald's character. Oh man, I'm bad with names. Yaphet, that's the name that wasn't loading. Was file not found for a little while there, but Yaphet's the name. Was pretty good too. Yeah, that was great. When they managed to get the shuttle off of the Orville, basically they were a shuttle leaving a ship while the ship is at quantum speed. It's at warp. It's at warp. It's fucking warp. It's warp. The ship was at warp, and they did the risky maneuver of taking a shuttle off of the ship while it was at warp. I'm calling it warp. It's fucking warp drive. Call it quantum drive all you want. It's warp drive. was kind of a cool scene, and their interaction with the Krill was pretty cool too. And then when they have Gordon on one of the Krill fighters, and you hear the Krill giving their little Krill battle comments, for the glory of Avis or whatever it was they were saying. There's Gordon over there, and what the Krill gives him a dirty look, and he's back at the guy. That was just a fucking awesome scene. I mean, Best of Both Worlds avoided, probably for budget reasons, big action moments. There's kind of some cool scenes with battles where you get to see phaser beams and Borg grabbing beams and cutting beams or whatever. Sure, there's some cool moments like that, but even when you get the kick-ass action scenes, the Orville is doing it better. Voyager, the best battle scenes in Star Trek, some people say Star Trek 2. It's well, yeah, it was a Star Trek original series movie where you actually get to see the phasers shoot. But it was kind of slow and dull combat. For me, the best battles in Star Trek for actual action scenes was Star Trek Nemesis, some scenes in Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise. And Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine didn't have as great a budget as some of the later Voyager, it was more practical. I don't know how you describe Deep Space Nine, but they did pretty good for what they had. But yeah, the Orville, yeah, I know technology has advanced, but the Orville, they had awesome space battle scenes, and they made it interesting too. Personally, I think phasers look cool than those little plasma bursts that the Orville does. Though the Orville's plasma cannons, I find are a fair bit cooler than what the phasers look like in Star Trek Discovery, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I mean, they ended it with a big action scene, and the series had its moments of personality and drama, kind of like Best of Both Worlds, and in Star Trek The Next Generation, I keep comparing it to Best of Both Worlds. And the metaphor kind of works. But Best of Both Worlds, they focused on the drama, and you don't end it with a big action sequence. The Orville managed to keep the drama, the personality, and all that active, the thoughtfulness, all of that. That managed to keep all that right there in the story, and also do a big ass battle at the end, and that was fucking great. It was just straight up fucking was. I mean, that. There was one point where I was watching the episode, I just kind of started laughing, and it wasn't that it was a funny scene. It was just what they did. It's holy fuck! This episode actually turned out that fucking good. Part of what made it good was you had a season and a half of the Orville kind of leading up to this. And then you have all this. And it was laugh out. I literally laughed out loud at some of the scenes. And it wasn't that it was a particularly amusing scene. It's just holy fuck. It was just that fucking good. And this is probably the most non-productive rant I could do about, the Orville and Star Trek, because you just keep going back to the fact. It's holy fuck, that was good. At the same time, that's all you can really say about it. I think it was a video by the Anti-Trekker, where he talked about you can see the difference in certain things. And he used the example of, he used the Family Guy episode where they do the parody of Star Wars. You can tell they're making fun of Star Wars, but you can tell they love Star Wars when they're doing it. They're doing Family Guy style jokes, but you can tell that they're writing about and doing a parody of something they love as they do it. And it's amusing and it's good. Then compare that to um, Spaceballs. Spaceballs is funny, but you can kind of tell that while it's a parody of Star Wars and to a lesser degree Star Trek, like there are some references in there to you can get from like references to Star Trek and Transformers and stuff like that, but mostly it's Star Wars. You get the impression that it's not made by somebody that really cares or loves Star Wars, but it's still funny. It's still entertaining. But you can feel the difference. It feels like it's being done by somebody that doesn't love what they're doing. They're just doing a good job, but you can tell that the creative force behind it isn't loving what they're doing. And with the new Star Wars movies, you can tell it's being made by people that don't really seem to care about Star Wars. They don't love it. They don't respect it. They don't want to. They're not truly caring about it. The same with Star Trek Discovery. I don't remember all the examples he used, but I thought of that as a perfect way of wording it. Comparing Spaceballs is good, but it doesn't seem to love what it's doing. Or it doesn't love the subject matter that's parodying. The Family Guy parody of Star Wars, you could tell that they loved what they were doing the parody of, and it came out great. With some stuff like I said, I forget all the details of the original metaphor, but with Star Trek Discovery and the new Star Wars stuff, it doesn't feel like the people involved with it love or care about what they're doing. They're just making crap and then insulting the fans when the fans don't like it. The Orville comes off as though it's being made by people who not only want to make something kind of like Star Trek, and they obviously don't have the rights to make something with the Star Trek name or anything like that, making something different, but you can tell that it's being made by people that love what they're doing. And any inspiration that it might take from Star Trek or the Twilight Zone, you can tell that they love the material that they're being inspired by. Like with the Orville, and I don't remember if the Orville was part of that reference, but I think it might have been. It's been so long since I saw that video. But I remember the example, and it was given, like the difference between the Family Guy parody of Star Wars and Spaceballs. But both of those were good, as opposed to like Star Trek Discovery and the new Star Wars movies, which aren't even really good. I think that metaphor actually compared the new Star Wars movies actually to being more like Spaceballs in some ways. It's like a bad version of Spaceballs. I forget. It's a long time since I saw that video. But I remember that thought being referenced in the video I saw a long time ago. And like with the Orville, you can tell that the people creating it actually care about what they're producing. And anything about it that's like a parody of Star Trek, you get the impression that it's made by people that love Star Trek. That the ideas, the concepts, they're making something different, but it's not cynical. It's not. If it fails, it's not there to hate the fans for not paying money to go see it. It's not there to spite anybody. It's not just well made. It's made by people that love what they're doing, and it comes off like that. It comes off absolutely like that. And I don't know, like Star Trek Enterprise is to this date my favorite television show. I love what it did with the mythos of Star Trek. I love how it managed to also be its own thing. I loved how it took the aesthetics of space-based science fiction, made it feel kind of real and kind of interesting. Like when you're watching people on the NX-01, it feels like it could be a real ship. Things like that. The Orville looks a little more like Next Generation, which is a little more futuristic, a little more comfortable, and so forth, all that, But, it doesn't feel unrealistic. You know, and it's by so many of the same people that worked on Enterprise and Star Trek: The Next Generation, both shows I loved, are working here on the Orville. And of course, Family Guy. Family Guy. Family Guy's had a lot of hit and miss seasons. Family Guy, I feel as though Family Guy aged better than The Simpsons or South Park. South Park gets too full of itself, and they try to be smart and fail at it. And they've had a lot of good moments. They had moments where they get a little bit boring and die off, and they come back. Like, they can come back from getting lame. Like, South Park can get a little bit boring and come back from it. But Family Guy... The thing about Family Guy is... they kind of act like... People act like it was a ripoff of The Simpsons, and even they joke about that. But really, it was a parody of everything. Peter Griffin was a big, dumb guy father character, but he wasn't really a ripoff of Homer Simpson. There's a lot of big, dumb, fat guy characters in TV sitcoms. Hell, that type of character seems to go all the way back to Fred Flintstone. Yeah, the caveman days of television. You know, what was that? Was it the 50s or 60s? I think it was the 50s when... What was it, the 60s? I forget when the first episode of the Flintstones aired, but yeah, it was either the 50s or the 60s. I'm pretty sure it was the 50s, but I could be completely wrong about that. I just know the Flintstones are old. They're cartoons. They're originally aimed at an adult audience. Mispronouncing my words there. Aimed at an adult audience. There was more censorship at the time, so they couldn't be quite as what we think of as adult now. Then they started marketing them to kids. And my dry air is bothering my lips. I hate dry air. I'm looking forward to the humidity of summer. You know, and then you have like The Simpsons, big dumb guy father, but you know, a lot of sitcoms have that. It's like a cliche. And Peter Griffin, you know, the stereotypical, you know, TV father character, big dumb fat guy, you know. Meg definitely isn't a parody of Lisa Simpson. Chris Griffin's definitely not a parody of Bart, nor is Stewie. You know, I'd never confuse Lois for Marge, you know. Yeah, but, you know, there was always that joke that they were a ripoff of The Simpsons, and, but what I found Family Guy did that was bad, which a lot of shows do, is they, after a while, they became a stereotype of themselves. I don't criticize them for all the gags and cutaway jokes. To me, that's not a problem. That's not a bad thing. That's part of what makes the show what it is. But eventually the show kind of became a parody of itself. Peter just wasn't an over-enthusiastic dumb guy anymore. He was borderline sociopathic in the things he would do. Just how destructive and much of a problem is. Brian went from being the heart of the show to being a full of himself douchebag. Stewie might have became a little more personable, losing a little bit of the edge that he had early on. But probably his transformation probably was the one that was the least bad. But, you know, Meg and Chris, wasn't a lot for them to change. More people's reaction to Meg is what kind of changed, got harsher. But when they made the characters less likable, because they just wanted to run with a gag of this would be the stupid thing that the characters would do, they made the show less interesting and less funny. And to a certain degree or other, it seemed like they recognized that and kind of, to a degree, fixed it. They didn't fix it perfectly, but I feel like Family Guy aged better than either The Simpsons or South Park, because when they recognized what was wrong with themselves, they kind of mitigated it, I thought. Because as they got weaker and then worse, I found they did come back from that a bit. And I don't even know if they're making new episodes of American Dad because it moved to a different network. But the last time I watched newer episodes of American Dad, made by the same people as Family Guy, that show actually underwent some pretty decent improvements. You know, I've seen criticisms over the years, especially by the guys at South Park who are just full of themselves about how bad, you know, the writing at Family Guy is and blah, 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 whatever. And then it's like, yeah, well, the people behind Family Guy, they also brought us Cosmos. They brought Cosmos back to TV. South Park did some pretty good social criticism and also some full of themselves social criticism, you know, a little bit of both. Social parody, social discussion, whatever you want to say about it. But they ain't done nothing as good as Cosmos. And none of them have done anything that compares to the Orville. Anyway, I have been sustaining my waking functions. I've been solely functioning. I downed this earlier. Just full of caffeine. Caffeine and liquid delivery system. So you know what that means? I gotta go. Let's see. Bring up a little visual distraction. Bubbles. Stare at the bubbles for a while I go fire the phase cam on the porcelain wormhole. I gotta go to the bathroom. Which I will try to do as quickly as I can because I haven't finished this yet. Jaloja! There we go. All right. Had to go Jaloja. Is that a word or am I mixing up? Am I mixing up my Orville language? All right. Anyway, all right. We're done with the bubbles. All right. Yeah, that was the on-screen entertainment with bubbles. Bubbles. Well, I had to go Jaloja. Jaloja! Yeah. Well, now there's more room in me for more liquid. More liquid. More liquid. Okay, so all I can really do is say, wow, Orville. Wow, Orville. Sweet, merciful fuck, Orville. Now, here's something. A long time ago, I was going to do a video about this. Back in 2011, I recorded a video that I never got around to editing. And I still haven't edited. I actually saw some of the clips I was using for it, where I recorded the TV screen during the end credits of House MD. And it was one of the things that pissed me off with the Star Choice satellite system. Yeah, I was taking a moment to breathe because I'm pissed off at the Star Choice satellite system. That and the dry air is bothering my lips. And by blowing air over them, you know, your metabolic processes and, excuse me, provide your breath with water molecules. And feels like for one moment, the air rushing over my lips is not dry. Damn you, winter! Damn you straight to hell, winter! Damn dry air. Alright. Anyway, I was going to do a video about this a long time ago, and when I click on the Fox channel to watch the Fox channel, I don't dislike city television, but if the same thing is on city television, like when the Orville is on both city television and Fox, I want to actually be watching Fox. You know, some people hate advertisements. I don't. Now, first off, when people are like, some people, you know, like, here's the thing about advertisements. You should have the mental fortitude to fend off the brainwashing power of advertisements. You know, if you're like, oh, advertisements want me to buy everything, and no, just calm down. You gotta watch the ads and say, no, I don't need that. Okay, that ad for, I don't know, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, made me want to go buy a bunch of French fries because I'm hungry anyway. You know, okay, fine, fair enough, okay? Advertising is the sleazy whore of the entertainment industry. Even more so than the entertainment industry itself. Even more so than Hollywood. And that is a sleazy, whored out version of entertainment, you know. Yeah, like, yes, advertising is just that. But it is still art. Somebody had to get together, you know, people had to get together, make something that'll get your attention, sell something, stick in music, you know, put something together. So to totally dismiss an advertisement as not being a form of art, you know, it is. It might not be high art, it might not be the best example of art, but it is something somebody put together to get your attention, and it is a product of its time. I actually enjoy watching old VHS cassettes of things recorded off of television a long time ago. And then seeing the ads. Why? Because it was a product of the time. I think it's important for people to have the mental fortitude to not need to run out and buy everything they see in ads, and to realize that they're just being, a lot of it is just propaganda to get you to buy and want shit. Yes, that is important. But it is part of the time period. It is part of everything, okay? And when I tune into a channel, I want to see not just the show airing on that channel as the other people that tuned into that channel. I want to see the ads, everything from that environment for that market. Now, with Star Choice, sometimes something will be airing in the States. Vehicles going past. Sometimes something will air in the United States and a Canadian channel. And if I choose the channel from the United States, and the same thing is on both channels, they'll often give me the Canadian channel. And that always pissed me off. I remember when I was living in Bedford, the cable system there. Anybody remember that really horrible show, Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation? Yeah, it was bad. I was never a fan of Power Rangers. But some of the stuff that was on for kids of that type, there was Power Rangers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, and Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. And I remember the Bedford cable channel would do that. I remember one time I tuned into one of the channels in the States, and they made me watch the Canadian version. and something had come on, and it was like this crossover between Ninja Turtles, Big Bad Beetleborgs, and the Power Rangers. And these were three things I didn't care about, other than the fact I had liked other incarnations of Ninja Turtles, especially the comics. Oh, another notification. Lore Reloaded. Modern warships of the Klingon Empire. Okay, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'll watch that later. But I like crossovers. Crossovers were interesting to me, and I thought, oh, well, I'm kind of curious about this. This stuck in my mind because it was a reason to watch a crappy television show, was the fact that it was a crossover. And I remember tuning to the channel. Then they made me watch the same TV show with the same TV show title, but a different episode, because the same show was airing on a different a Canadian network as what was on the network from the States, but it was an entirely different episode, and it wasn't the crossover episode. And I'm like, look, I don't normally want to watch this show, but I was flipping through, and I saw what was about to come on was like this weird-ass crossover episode that I was curious about, and now you're making me watch a different channel because you won't let me watch the one from the United States when another show with the same title is on a Canadian network, but it's not the same episode. That really pissed me off. That was like back in, it was possibly late 1997, probably early 1998. And I just remember thinking the cable in Bedford really pissed me off when they did that. They were choosing for me which channel I wanted, which channel I was going to have to watch. And I did not consider that acceptable. And most of all, I didn't even get to watch the episode that I wanted to watch, which probably would have been bad, but I was curious because I liked crossovers. Now, getting back to House MD, I remember recording the ending credits for like the second last episode of House MD or something like that to make a point. And I never did get around to editing the video. I happened across the old video files that I had that I could have made the video with not that long ago. The thing about when I would watch House MD, I wanted to watch the version on the Fox network. Not just because I wanted to see ads from New York or wherever, more so than local Canadian ads that I'm liable to see on my local Canadian channels that I often watch anyway. It wasn't just that. At the end of the episode, of most episodes of House MD, they would have a trailer for the next episode. And when I would try to watch the version on Fox earlier in the day, they would make me watch the version that was airing on a Canadian channel. And the Canadian channel would, at the end, go to the ending credits, and I wouldn't get to see the trailer for next week's episode. Now, while they screwed you over during the earlier time, later at night, they let that slip, and you tune into Fox, you'd actually see the Fox network. And on the Fox network, I'd have to wait till the later time zone, tune into House MD, and watch the ending credits of the House MD that aired later that night, because Star Choice, I guess, went to sleep and stopped switching the channels on me. So I could actually see the end credits as they aired on the Fox network to get the trailer for the next episode. Well, when I watched the Orville this week, I know that the next episode's going to involve the Krill. I mean, this episode featured the Krill and, and so forth, But next episode's going to involve the Krill. I mean, they could have gone just about anywhere with the next episode, but, returning to the Krill is a good idea. The Krill helped out with the Kalon, so, the potential for more usage of the Krill, that would be just great, just fine, that's all good, all right? When the first time I watched it, earlier in the night, I didn't get any trailers at the end of it. They made me watch the version on City TV, not CTV. That would be Canadian television. City TV, which is also a Canadian channel. City TV, that version of the airing was that I had to watch was the version broadcast in. At the end of the episode, there was no trailer for the next episode. It was when I watched it a second time later that night that I got to see the trailer for the next episode. That was lame. Like, because later in that night, it was later at night, and for some reason, Star Choice didn't seem to decide, well, we need to force you to watch a Canadian channel instead of the one from the United States. I actually got to watch it as it appeared on Fox in that other time zone, which meant I got to see the ending credits as it appeared on Fox. And the Fox ending credits, gave you Fox actually gave a little trailer of the next episode. And that's how I know the next episode's going to involve the Krill. Just a thought on watching them on two different channels. Star Trek Discovery was also on again later that night. Actually, this time was one of the few times the episode of Star Trek Discovery didn't go into overtime. If Star Trek Discovery had gone into overtime this time, I just wouldn't have watched the end of it. I would have watched the Orville as soon as Orville came on television. Then I would have caught the end of the Star Trek Discovery episode later that night when it aired later that night. Because, you know what? The fact that Discovery comes on the Space Channel first, and I just kind of watched through it rather than wait till even later that night to watch Star Trek Discovery when it airs again later that night, later on the Space Channel. Rather than doing that, like, I usually watch the Star Trek Discovery episode, then watch what's left of the Orville. Then I'd watch the Orville again later, and, watch the Orville twice, only missing a little bit of it and getting caught in later. This time, there was like, no way anything was going to trump the Orville. I had to catch the Orville right from the start as soon as I could. Fuck you, Star Trek Discovery. You don't get priority this time just by coming on the air first. Which, by the way, apparently in the States where it's on CBS All Access, the streaming service, rather than coming on TV an hour before the Orville, it is provided to be streamable a half hour before the Orville starts. Their way to get people distracted and not watch the Orville. That's what it looks like. I mean, that could just be a conspiracy theory. But why else do that? I noticed here in Canada, where it airs a full hour before the Orville comes on, it's like it could get over, then you watch the Orville. But I noticed most of the time, it doesn't run for an hour. It seems to have unusually long commercial breaks, but usually Star Trek Discovery gets over either 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, or 15 minutes late. So it goes over the hour-long runtime. So it overlaps with the Orville even when it airs an hour earlier. But last episode of Discovery went, well, I wouldn't say went for an hour because there's also commercials, but it fit within the hour-long time slot that it's on the Space Channel. I guess most of the rest of the world watches it on Netflix. Here's the thing, though. It looks very strongly like they're trying to distract people away from watching the Orville. The people at CBS All Access decide when it's going to stream. But that's a stupid fucking streaming service. I mean, I prefer watching things on network television, just turning the channel on, letting it play, change the channel when I want to watch something different. I'm not a big fan of streaming services, at least not compared to just sitting back and letting the TV make noise for me, I like the TV just plain running, like a noisy window to the world of crap people want to produce. And while most of what's on television is crap, The same thing goes for books and movies and everything, you know. There's a lot of crap out there. But you know what? At least it's not quiet. At least it's a little noise for me to decide whether I'm going to look up from what I'm doing or, look at the TV or go back to what I'm doing, At least it's something. I actually like the television experience with television channels. That said, when you compare the Orville on TV to a streaming service, with the streaming service, well, it's easy to watch something at any time. If Star Trek Discovery, comes on the streaming service, it overlaps itself just a little bit earlier than the Orville comes on television. There's nothing about Star Trek Discovery that, ever made me think I wouldn't pause the video or just not bother to watch the video until later. Because with a streaming service, it's like, yeah, as soon as it hits online, as soon as it's available online, you don't have to watch it the first moment. It's not like you're going to miss something like on television. So I would wait until after the Orville was over before I'd bother watching the new episode of Star Trek Discovery. I mean, I don't really think that... I think that's kind of a faulty plan, but you can kind of tell that's what they're going for. But here, even if I did subscribe to CBS All Access, the Canadian version, I don't think I'd get Star Trek Discovery on it. If I miss an episode, I'm going to spray a little nasal spray into my sinuses to keep myself breathing. I don't think CBS All Access would actually even give me Star Trek Discovery here due to regional reasons. I think I can stream it off of... Oh, I forget what it is that I can stream it off of if I wanted to, but I don't. And the Orville. City TV, if I look up their website here in Canada, I can just stream the Orville at any time if I miss the episode. Because actually, the first episode of this season, when it aired, I was like, oh, shit, man, the Orville already started airing? I totally missed that. But, I went online and watched it anyway. And City TV officially broadcast the episodes. Now, I'm trying to remember if there was an episode after that I had caught when it aired on television, but I watched it again. I don't know if I did that or not. But, if you miss an episode, you can stream it anyway. I'm actually tempted to just rewatch Part 1 and Part 2 of Identity if they're both still available. I think with City TV, they only stream it for a week or two after it aired. I think that's how they work. So if you miss it, you don't want to miss it by more than 3 weeks. But I could be wrong about that. They could have every episode ever for all I know. But yeah. But the Orville did this season. With a creative team behind it, the collective works of the people behind Family Guy and Star Trek Enterprise, just about everybody from Star Trek Enterprise that was like a writer or producer, like you'll see their name in the credits of this, and many of them you'll see them back as far as not just Voyager but Star Trek: The Next Generation. Those people, their names are in the credits. And they're still doing good. They're still doing awesome science fiction. Then add to that some of the names from the Family Guy credits, And it's not just Seth MacFarlane, but yeah, this is Seth MacFarlane's dream TV show. You can tell. It's like, he wanted to make a Star Trek fan film, but it's its own universe, and he did. Holy fuck, did he do a good job with it? Like everything that was ever wrong with Star Trek, it's like they're doing it right now. Wow. Anyway, I should soon end this. I mean, because all there is left for me to say is, wow. Like, wow. I mean, the Orville, just wow. Wow. I don't know if it could get better. I mean, the last episode, I mean, it was just so good. I just kind of started laughing. I was watching it. I just kind of started laughing, and it wasn't really a funny moment. I was like, holy fuck, this is awesome. And I just kind of like started laughing, you know? I mean, what's next? The next episode will be so amazing. Just there tears running down the side of my eyes. Well, I mean, I didn't have tears running down the side of my eyes, but I was laughing, and probably little tears for me because, like, I actually literally started laughing out loud during some of the scenes. Was over halfway into it, but it wasn't even a funny moment. It's just like, holy fuck, this is awesome. I literally started laughing out loud. The only thing I think of is like, how can it get better? Will it be deadly? Will I take a heart attack? Maybe just start watching it and start orgasming. I don't fucking know what it'll do next. But as I literally started laughing out loud, not specifically on a joke, it was just so fucking awesome. Fuck yeah. You know, a lot of my favorite things went to hell. Just got crappy. I mean, I really loved the Sonic the Hedgehog video games. From the gameplay to the world building, the weird little video game world they had created for the Sonic games. And, you know, it went 3D and you had some great storytelling. I mean, Sonic Adventure had the theme of an angry god that was basically an all-powerful life form, enraged when its children were trampled by the Echidna Empire, and a plot line of Robotnik trying to use it for his own goal. There's a lot more, I don't know how to describe, but there's a lot more thoughtfulness in that game than I think a lot of people would give it credit for when you watch it. And that's one of the things I loved about the Sonic series. Then the second game involved somebody so enraged at the human species they would be willing to destroy the world, themselves included, just to get revenge for how humanity had killed someone that they had loved. And that was like a dark and interesting theme in Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Heroes kind of sucked. I hated the gameplay in it, but I kind of loved how the characters interacted and talked to each other during gameplay. And I also kind of liked the plot line for Team Dark. Other than that, I was like, Sonic Heroes was just kind of there, and I was kind of disappointed with it. I love the game Shadow the Hedgehog, though. Oh, another notification. I didn't catch that one. Loved the game Shadow the Hedgehog. That was also a great game. Very underrated, in my opinion, and it plays more like the first two Sonic Adventure games. And the plot line was interestingly dark, and I loved it for it. Then there was Sonic 2006, which was a glitchy mess. The visuals, I liked the visuals. I loved the story of how it involved a god coming into existence, and they basically had to abort the god to save the space-time continuum. There was actually a lot of thoughtfulness in it. Characters pondering, what if the world had turned against them? You know, would they stand with the person they cared for? How could they mistrust somebody that they cared for when somebody else was led to believe somebody would destroy the world? The idea of a belief in a god that would bring to a point where time, like people would be with the dead again, that time would no longer keep them separate. But the being was actually going to end time, collapsing the universe into non-existence, given the chance of the power, and that was how it was going to solve the whole problem with time, It's like watching the character, like the Shadow the Hedgehog character, his story arc, how he was like being manipulated, but he constantly saw through it. Also watching him kick Silver the Hedgehog in the back of the head was kind of amusing too. And how Sonic went through the story, kind of like not having time to pick up all the details on what's going on, and then being caught up in something where he was literally killed and then brought back from the dead to kill God. I mean, fuck yeah. I love the philosophical underpinnings of that. It's like Xenogears, but Sonic the Hedgehog, you know? That's just bloody fucking awesome. Problem was the gameplay sucked. They rushed it. The gameplay controls were not well thought through. I think that was like one of the neighbors, but yeah, I could hear a bump of a car door. It seemed too far to be here, but anyway, no activity here. But I soon gotta end this anyway. I'm surprised the phone hasn't rung or something like that. But yeah, like just the thoughtfulness of the plot line I loved, but I despised the gameplay. It was like even poorly thought out. Then you had like Sonic Unleashed, which wasn't as glitchy as Sonic 2009, but managed to be worse. Well, on the Nintendo Wii, it felt like an incomplete game. It didn't feel like it had much substance to it. It felt incomplete. But at least when you played as the Werehog in the Nintendo GameCube version of the game, it was playable. The Xbox version, like PlayStation 3, Xbox, compared to PlayStation 2 and Wii versions of the game, the bigger, more complete version of the game, just had all-round horrible gameplay, bad control designs, just sucked. And the story was fairly weak compared to other Sonic games. Though it had some thoughtful moments. The music was usually an awesome thing in all the Sonic games, but in Sonic Unleashed it was kind of weak. The only really strong song in it was like the opening song. Actually, I really loved the opening song in it. Remember some of the lines in it? I want to go where no one has gone before, something like that. Please wake me up when I get there. It feels like I'm lost in a dream. You know, it had an awesome opening theme. I'll give it that. But Sonic Unleashed sucked. Sonic Colors was playable, but boring and not remotely fun. Sonic Generations felt like demo levels from past Sonic games that were playable, but not as fun as playing the originals, and merged together with a story that just felt weak. Sonic the Lost World was, whatever, you know. Sonic Forces, looks like that might be enjoyable. Sonic Mania looks awesome, though. But, like, I really loved the Sonic the Hedgehog game series, but it went to crap. Star Trek, I loved Star Trek. And, while I got a little disappointed with it for a while there, when it came down to Enterprise and Nemesis, I just started loving it more and more. And then we get the 2009 movie, which I heard one of the guys behind the new Star Trek movie, one of the writers, the guy who no longer has anything to do with Star Trek other than J.J. Abrams, one of the co-writers, liked some of the Star Trek novels and used them as influence. They influenced him. And I thought, that's a positive sign. Then the movie turned out to be like painfully dumb. Not just like dumb like it lacks intelligent substance. It was like dumb like bad dumb, like Transformers movie, live action Transformers movie level of dumb. I have no idea. Like, it was like they were trying to make a movie that was deliberately stupid. Like, and Star Trek never really recovered from that. I mean, that, as for timeline continuity issues, different timeline. I'm fine with that. But it was just so bloody fucking stupid that even shoehorning it into the Star Trek multiverse seems like it dilutes the whole thing. It's just bad. And same for Star Trek in the Darkness, which overall wouldn't be as bad, but then they use they use Khan's blood as resurrection juice, and I'm like, no, that's as bad as the last movie. Star Trek Beyond was okay. Star Trek Discovery, just bad choices with Star Trek Discovery all around. Like, Star Trek really went to hell. Like, I loved Sonic the Hedgehog, loved Star Trek, but their franchises just went to hell. Ghostbusters, great first movie, okay second movie, excellent animated series, excellent sequel animated series, Extreme Ghostbusters. Had some weak points, had some great points. I was more interested in the idea of them doing a new animated series than ever doing a new movie. But when they came out with Ghostbusters, the video game, and it was basically Ghostbusters 3, I'm like, yeah, yeah, definitely more Ghostbusters. And then they gave us Ghostbusters 2016 or Ghostbusters Answers, whatever you want to call it, which was lame. Some of the IDW comics were great, but most of them are just so-so. Yeah. Like, Ghostbusters ain't what it used to be. Like, the new movie might be good, but, you know, Ghostbusters, Star Trek, Sonic the Hedgehog, all the things I love just kind of went through this time of decay and deterioration where the quality just dropped. And I now know where all the quality is. All the quality in the universe seems to be concentrated in the Orville. That's all that's left. The last thing Babylon 5 ever did was that made-for-DVD movie, the two little stories that they put on DVD, and they sucked. Well, one of them was okay, and the other one was just depressing crap. I mean, Babylon 5 had been awesome. It went down the toilet. Star Wars was awesome. Star Wars comics done by Dark Horse Comics, some great novels. Knights of the Old Republic was bloody fucking awesome. Episodes 4 and 3 were great. Episode 2 was okay. Episodes 5, 6, and 1 were too silly for me to really care about, but I love Episode 4 and Episode 3. And Knights of the Old Republic. Knights of the Old Republic was awesome. Then Star Wars went down the toilet. I wasn't that into Star Wars, but man, Knights of the Old Republic is bloody fucking awesome. So, yeah, Star Wars. Nope. The whole, anything that wasn't a movie or the Clone Wars got booted out of the Star Wars continuity, and yeah, now it's just Legends material. And yeah, Star Wars sucks now. It's not just that Star Wars created a new universe that isn't as good as the old one. It's that it just sucks. It got rid of everything that was good, and now it sucks. I mean, they shouldn't give a shit about Star Wars Episode 9. Episode 7 and 8 sucked. They should be giving us Knights of the Old Republic 3. Fuck the movies. Just give us Knights of the Old Republic 3. Give them back to Dark Horse Comics, and, you know. More Dawn of the Jedi. That was something I was interested in. Dawn of the Jedi. Oh man, the Darth Bane novels. Fuck yeah, there was some good Star Wars stuff. But now Star Wars sucks. Just does. Just fucking does. Maybe one day we'll get Phantasy Star 5. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I don't know. Everything sucks. But not the Orville. That's where all the quality went. All the quality, all the goodness of the universe, it's just concentrated in the Orville. That's all there is. Straight up, that's all there is to it. Everything that's good, it's in the Orville. I never did get around to seeing Alita Battle Angel. It always takes me a minute for the name to load. I want to say Attila, Atla, like, I just don't want to get the name right. I remember a long time ago, somebody I went to college with lended me some anime on video cassette. And I lended him some that I had. I'm pretty sure I lended him Macross Plus. And he lended me some stuff that was recorded onto a single VHS cassette, I think it was. Maybe it was multiple ones. And one of the things that came up was Battle Angel. It was just called Battle Angel. I don't remember the names. I don't remember a whole lot of it. But I remember I loved it. I remember it had this interesting, cyborg character, the Battle Angel character herself. And I remember this old doctor, scientist that reminded me of Egon Spengler in Extreme Ghostbusters. If old, aged Egon Spengler had become like a vigilante of sorts and was fighting off cyborgs that were stealing body parts from other people and stuff like that and trying to help the sick and weak, and there was this somehow up in the sky that was where the rich people were dumping garbage on people or shit like that. I forget, but I don't remember character names. I don't remember a lot of details. I just remember loving it. And then years later, a friend of mine had a job at a recycle depot, and he got a book It was the actual Battle Angel manga, except it was Battle Angel Attila, it said on the title. It didn't just say Battle Angel. And I was like, dude, you got the anime for Battle Angel. Like, a library was discarding it. He had a job at a recycle depot, and for a little while, and they were picking up stuff that was being thrown out at a library, and they got first dibs on the books, and he got the Battle Angel book, and I flipped through it, I remember, but I never read it, and then I remembered, man, I love Battle Angel. Then I heard something about that James Cameron, if he ever got around it, was thinking about doing a movie based on that. And then out of nowhere, I see ads for something, and just in the back of my mind, just something, that kind of reminds me of Battle Angel. And then the title comes up, Alita, Battle Angel. And I'm like, fuck yeah! I didn't remember the characters' names, all kinds of things I didn't remember. But I remember I loved it. And now, I think that's supposed to be good. I was going to go see it with a friend of mine that I was communicating with online. But never really worked out, but hopefully I'll see it eventually. And, if I have to wait till it comes out on DVD, I'll buy me a copy of the DVD of that, because that looks good. But, hopefully I'll get around to seeing it in the theater, because that's really what the media companies care about, is numbers in the theater. I don't know why. To me, the theatrical experience is the worst way to view something. I want an actual DVD disc. Whatever. Or Blu-ray, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, holy sweet merciful fuck, the Orville is awesome. It just keeps getting better. And that's all there is for me to say about anything. There's stuff I could have talked about, not that long ago I saw, stuff going on, with India and Pakistan, nuclear powers. I guess somebody shot down somebody's warplane and parading around the fact they did that, and, nuclear powers might just go to war. There might be fallout for the entire planet. But fuck it, I watched the Orville, great stuff to talk about. Holy sweet merciful fuck, the Orville. That's all there is for me to say. And basically I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth mentioning. Because, let's bring it up. Oh, on Twitter, Orville fan page, and Scott Grimes just retweeted Claire's photo. Just the, alright. Could this be worth? Come on, wake up, react. Alright, wait. Alright, and if you're not going... Ooh, this took me right into YouTube instead of Twitter. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm already streaming on YouTube, and my connection speed is crappy enough. Don't want to overtest that. Come on. Ooh, I'm in Twitter, so yeah, lots of porn. Lots and lots of porn. Alright, let's see. What am I... Alright. Yeah, don't load up the porn, because I don't want to slow down the internet connection. Come on. Where's... Alright, let's see. What was the Orville? It was an Orville-related tweet, and I'm talking about the Orville, so come on. Oh, okay, yeah, alright, yeah, that's cool, alright. Wait, brought me back here, alright, no, I want to make that, yeah, wait, maybe if I tap it, there we go, alright, put like that, yeah, there we go, yeah, there he is, Is that Joe? Can you see that? Yeah, there he is in the krill fighter, looking over at the other krill, and the krill, looks back at her, like, yeah, they give each other, like, this kind of half nasty looks. Oh, man, that was just fucking awesome. Yeah, the Orville's fucking awesome. Fuck. That's all there is to say about it. I gotta end this. What is it, Friday? Yeah, it's Friday. Oh, cool. If Star Trek Enterprise isn't already on, I think it'll soon be on. Did it come on at 3 or is it going to come on at 4? But there's going to be... It's Friday, so there'll be multiple episodes of Star Trek Enterprise. Here's the clock. We're getting close to 4 o'clock. So, there's the phase pistol, so we can... Star Trek Enterprise related. Time to watch Star Trek Enterprise. There we go. That's the clock that's on the wall currently. I remember when it was an oval clock circled with a yellow plastic, and so many clocks over the years. I'm just thinking of the 1980s and the 1990s. Hello, clock with your bent-looking handle, which is actually, I think it's supposed to be like that, but it looks bent. Excuse me. Time to go Star Trek the television and watch me some Star Trek. Star Trek Enterprise, the greatest Star Trek of all. But then again, maybe the Orville will become the greatest Star Trek of all, even though it's not technically Star Trek. The spirit of Star Trek is strong in that one. Sweet merciful fuck. I mean, Star Trek Discovery sucks. Star Trek 2009 sucked even worse. Star Trek Into Darkness used Khan's blood as resurrection juice. But we have the Orville. Yay, Orville. Sweet merciful fuck. Thank you, Orville. Yep. Alright. Gonna watch some Star Trek. Gonna end this. Gonna watch some Star Trek. Gonna consume caffeine until I go into cardiac arrest. Or just watch Star Trek. Star Trek will keep me alive. Yeah. Excuse me. Why haven't I ended this? Why haven't I ended this? Is it laziness? I don't know. I'm fucking with this thing, Alright. Alright, so I'm going to press the little X right there and end this thing, and it'll ask me if I want to stop streaming. And sometimes it won't actually stop streaming until I actually click that I want it to stop streaming. Other times it seems to stop streaming even before that. But anyway, feel free to look for more of my stuff. I might post some stuff to Subscribe Star, YouTube, BitChute, DTube, DLive, whatever. Oh, BitTube. I tend to focus differently, different places on how I upload stuff, Ooh, something went kaglink. Kaglink, what's going on, Kaglink? Ah, damn it, snowfall warning. Blue sky out there, motherfucker. Snowfall warning. When's that? Friday? That's today. Yeah, son of a bitch. Yeah, I was hoping to go places, do stuff. Well, according to this weather app, it's not supposed to snow until Sunday. That gives me time to go places, do people, whatever. God damn it. It's snow. Anyway, I hope this app is right and not the weather warning. Damn it all to hell. This is what we need. Snow-covered roads. Screwed. Excuse me. Now, yeah, I was going to end this. God damn, the Orville was awesome. But I'm going to end this. Yep, look for me on YouTube. Be it my channel or other people with small-time content creators without a lot of subscribers, consider subscribing. So consider subscribing to any small YouTube channel. It helps. It helps. And in fact, even if you're not interested in the content creator, it's okay. Just because you subscribe to somebody doesn't mean you're actually going to get to see their content. For that, you have to click the bell. But subscribing is what actually helps the channel. But if you're not interested, just don't click the bell, And even if you click the bell, you might not get notifications. In fact, sometimes you might even get notifications for people you're not even subscribed to. Why? Anyway, yeah.
Just how these sites work now. But as for me, live streaming here on YouTube, and I'll be uploading stuff here and YouTube and DTube and BitChute, and when I have an organized group of videos I want to upload, I'll probably upload some to BitTube as well, all over the place. Crap on Instagram, and Subscribestar, and whatever. What haven't I mentioned? Doesn't matter. Time for me to end this. Time for me to end this. Alright. Click the little X there and stop the video, and thank you and good night, everybody. Didn't do anything. Okay, I'll try that again. I suppose one way I could stop the video is just to unplug the Wi-Fi. Just no power coming to me. Alright, let's see. Am I sure I want to stop streaming? I'm going to say yes. Yes, okay, but the time when I clicked the X, it actually worked. So I'm actually about to stop streaming. In fact, it may have already stopped streaming, whether or not. It's probably 50-50 on whether or not it already stopped.